Welcome. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. It's nice to see so many people here. So our meeting actually starts at 6 o'clock. We do some closed session in reference to contracts. So we are back in open session tonight. And the first thing that I need to do is look at approval of our minutes from our November meeting. Approval of our minutes from our November meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We also had a special board meeting at the end of November, and I guess we need approval of those minutes as well.
So move. Second.
Any discussion on our special minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we need approval of the agenda and any additions to the agenda.
That's right.
Okay.
Approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So the next part of our meeting is our public listening session. Generally, our listening session is on agenda items only, but 4 times a year. We invite the public to speak on any issue, and this happens to be one of those nights. So I do have 5 individuals that want to speak. If you did not sign up and you want to speak, please see Rebecca, and she can help you with that registration. If not, I'm just gonna kind of go through these one by one, come up to the mic. These are recorded meetings, starting with Dawn Hendricks.
Going first, always great.
Luck of the draw. Welcome.
All right, thank you. The topic of conversation would be the new policy regarding holidays in our schools. I have elected to speak in favor of the new holiday policy. I guess what I'm hoping to hear from the school board and from all the educators in Waunakee are 2 words: challenge accepted. It's not easy to educate students, period. It's not easy to educate them about holidays and traditions you don't have a background in, that you have no experience in, that requires homework on your part to educate them. I want to hear challenge accepted. It's not that terribly long ago, I had my daughter come home from kindergarten and say that nobody else in her classroom had put their shoe in front of their door on December 5th. And I realized that I hadn't done my background, my job as a parent, to explain why that's part of our traditions. I think it's up to parents to talk about faith and tradition for themselves, their heart, their spirit, their body, and up to educators to work on the mind. And I think that the school board can help teachers along with that. This is not a wheel that needs reinventing. This is a policy that has been enacted in many schools within the Wisconsin state. And I think a good start would be to add other major holidays to the schedule, aside from Christian ones. Just 2 fundamental basic examples would be Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. There are many others, and that would help them with the second part of the policy, which was to understand and provide allowances when a quiz or a test falls on those major holidays, just to help educate the educators. And any other guidance that can be provided to them, I would encourage that be sent along. Again, I wouldn't leave it up to the educators to do all the Googling on their own. I think there are guides available. So I don't know if there's a time limit, but I'm going to stop here.
Thank
Are
you
there
very
questions
much.
for me? Is that how that works, or no? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Michelle Berg.
Hi there. I'm Michelle Berg. My husband and I have lived in the district for over 20 years. We have 4 kids ranging in age from 14 down to 3. So I believe that this policy in question really affects my family and my children coming up. I know that you all are aware of my position and my many questions and concerns about the policy and the policy-making process. procedures, and I would just like to highlight a few things tonight. I think that the FAQ document is really what is in question here. I don't like that this document is being viewed as policy. It is not policy. A careful read of it appears to even infringe on First Amendment rights of our teachers. I understand its intent, but feel it has caused more problems and confusion than clarification. I don't like it that staff and teachers are hearing and being told that they cannot display a Christmas tree or lights, make gingerbread houses, decorate Christmas cookies, play holiday music, show holiday movies, no holiday gifts to parents, etc., as well as displaying the colors of red or green or anything related to the secular Christmas holiday tradition, unless it reflects a balanced perspective of multiple cultural traditions and has an educational purpose. We aren't even talking about a baby Jesus here or religious items. We're just talking about secular Christmas items. And if anything was to have a religious connotation, it would be a menorah. There are so many questions. I mean, how do you really determine what is balanced and inclusive in such a period of time? Is it a week, over a month of December? Is it the whole year? Everything that exists is pretty much educational, so why do teachers have to be micromanaged and have to question their every move? I do thank you for all the recent emails sent to parents offering some clarification. However, the problem is we're still stuck with a poorly implemented policy that is being rushed into implementation because the board failed to pass it properly in October. Teachers have not been given enough time to revise their curriculum this December, and the damage the board and administrators are creating in the community is large. We now have fear and confusion ruling the day, and many teachers are choosing to do nothing with regard to teaching about Christmas, which is a U.S. publicly observed federal holiday. And instead, they're focusing on winter. And I don't know about you, but we really don't need any more winter in Wisconsin. And more U.S. history is now being taken out of America's schools, and I don't want to see the teaching of an American holiday tradition removed from our Waunakee schools. I would actually like to see that this policy, or this FAQ doc, to be rescinded, and principals and staff told they are free to make their own interpretations of what the new holiday policy language of balanced and inclusive looks like in their schools and classrooms when educating students on holiday traditions. The question 2 in the FAQ doc actually contains a link to winter holiday resources for multiple traditions. There are actually many very good suggestions for staff to choose from, including an article mentioning always tailor your classroom activities to fit the demographics of your classroom, and not to hesitate in contacting a child's family to learn how one of your students celebrates a holiday or tradition. But unfortunately, the responses in the FAQ are telling staff they can't do any of this. The teaching our children receive in the classrooms by our outstanding teachers in Waunakee is what continues to win our district the outstanding awards for one of the best school districts in the state. When did our teachers become so bad that they needed policies administered down to them to micromanage their decision-making authority on how and what they teach in our classrooms and what colors they can or can't use in the classroom? Lastly, I question the policy-making process this board undertook to get our community to this point. The steps taken to notify the public that these changes were taking place. It appears that most of the committee meetings and notification took place during the summer, when most families and teachers are on summer vacation. Moreover, none of us were aware of the ramifications of the new policy's wording and how it would be put into practice. I call on the school board to rethink your communication strategies and tactics for any future changes. This policy change and its hurried implementation has been, from my perspective, a disaster, and not at all what we would want to expect from a school district whose motto is committed to children, committed to community, and committed to excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Laura Meixner? Meixner, thank you.
First of all, I want to say thank you to the administration and the board for the work you do and for giving the public this listening session. A week ago, I invited a few friends to tonight's board meeting where I had heard there would be 1 of 4 listening sessions allowed by the Waunakee School Board. My friends and I had found out about holiday policy changes after the policies had already passed, and we were upset that we had missed out on being involved in the discussion. We were also upset that we heard many holiday traditions would no longer be allowed at school. That small group of friends grew to over 700 people being invited to tonight's meeting with one Facebook event invitation. Clearly, this is a topic that parents are passionate about and a topic that people are looking to receive clarification on. Changing something like a holiday policy is a big deal, and as you can see, many people want to have a chance to have their voices heard. I would wager that a large amount of uncertainty and frustration could have been avoided if parents and school stakeholders were invited to the holiday policy conversation early on when it was introduced for revision last spring. When the school board referendum was up for a vote, I received a large amount of communication from the district on what that referendum change would mean for our community, our schools, and taxpayer money. I believe the Waunakee School Board needs to review how they communicate with parents and how they might benefit from using calendar invites and agenda postings on social media to bring attention to important topics being addressed. I continue to read from school board members that the purpose of the new holiday policy is to make things better and provide a more inclusive atmosphere. So why are we excluding more of the holidays instead of adding new ones? I have heard that it was never the intent of the school board or administration to take the holidays away from kids. However, I can confirm that both of my sons have been affected by the new holiday policy changes. My youngest son won't be making a parent gift this year, while my oldest son is no longer doing Secret Santa with classmates. Implementing a holiday policy change where parents see and hear frustration from kids about last-minute holiday celebration changes doesn't bode well with many parents. I've even had a teacher reach out to me this week and tell me how they feel about the lack of holiday cheer is affecting the mood of the kids this year in school. The holidays can be a time of inclusion and celebration, not exclusion. Instead of banning any sort of recognition of the holidays, why can't we continue to teach our children about the diverse celebrations that happen throughout the year and the specific federal holidays that are recognized by even our government? My boys have learned valuable messages from the holiday celebrations at school, including messages of kindness, joy, and giving. Are we truly okay throwing away all holiday traditions that were acknowledged and appropriate for so many years in Waunakee? Where do we go from here? I would encourage the Waunakee School District to invite stakeholders and parents to be a part of the conversation on policies that apply directly to our children. A social media calendar invitation or an ongoing link in the Infinite Campus weekly email would be places that could give parents an ongoing resource and reminder of upcoming school board meetings and agendas. I would even suggest forming focus groups with various school parents who can reach out and spread the word when important items may need awareness or discussion. I want to see the winter concert and the Halloween parade continue, as they are wonderful traditions that our kids love and that many parents support. I would also like our schools to again include the bright decorations like ornaments, Santas, elves, trees, and that parents and classmate gifts can be used as opportunities to teach students about giving. I would like to see the spirit of inclusion be fostered in practical ways around the holidays, where teachers are given more direction on how to implement the education and celebratory aspects of our holidays, and that teachers are not afraid to focus on those things at the appropriate time of year. I moved to Waunakee because of the excellent schools and because I wanted my kids to experience a small town community school. School holiday traditions have been embraced for many years in Waunakee, and I hope the administration and school board can see the value of holiday celebrations for our kids and that their removal does not represent the Waunakee way. Thank you for listening and for your consideration.
Thank you, Laura, and also Michelle. Would you mind leaving your comments with us?
Yeah, I
Because I
actually
think
made
there are
copies for
some
everybody.
good suggestions in there. Thank you. Next is Kim Rainish.
Hi, thank you for having us here, and I promise to keep my comments very short. Mine is mostly from the heart, so I greatly appreciate the ladies who've been up here who've been able to express their opinions one way or another, and I do mimic, or I do agree, for example, with Laura, that I do believe that I have 3 children in this school district, and the reason I'm so proud to be in Waunakee is because we've had being a small community, we've been able to embrace these traditions, and I would hope too, instead of getting rid of everything, just like Laura had said too, my children have come home where they can't make a Yule log, or there's no longer the elf allowed in class, or now it's a diabetes tree instead of a Christmas tree. So, you know, that, I think just as a mother, that hurts my heart, because the traditions that we've all grown up with, whether or not you're a Christian or you're Jewish or any other faith, I do believe that the inclusion is way more important for teaching about cultural diversity. I know I listened or I read one of the posting on Facebook from one of the board members, and they talked about, well, and the policies too that have been put forth, that it's talking about that they can have these traditions as long as they can be proven to be educational. But when was education only from a book? And this is what I feel like the education can be so much broader, again, about inclusion, cultural diversity. I think we're really missing a great opportunity here in Waunakee to differentiate ourselves. We've differentiated ourselves in so many other ways by being such a great school district with grades and our scholastic achievements, our sports achievements. Do we really want to be known in this area by differentiating ourselves with taking away all holiday celebrations? So I would just, again, not necessarily as eloquently spoken as some of the other parents in the room, but just from the heart, I know this hurts my children. This hurts us, I think, as people of this community, that we are taking away some vital traditions and impact that these holiday celebrations can have. I mean, and what better lesson to teach a child at Christmas time, the gift, or to teach them about the gift of giving and the gift of, just the excitement of the magic of Christmas or the holiday season, whether you're, again, celebrating it as a Christian or a Jewish person or any other, there's still magic in the air with this time of year, no matter what holiday it is, and I think we should embrace that more as a community. Thank you for your time. I appreciate all that you do. I know you guys have an incredibly tough job, and I think it's definitely made me more aware, and I felt quite honestly kind of ridiculous that I did not know more about this until my child comes home and tells me that there's no longer an elf on the shelf in her classroom. So I feel like hopefully too this will motivate more of us to get more involved and play a more active role, because I know you have a very tough job. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Michelle Dana.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dama. I have been in the Waunakee Community School District for 10 years, and I have 3 children in the district that vary in ages from the intermediate school level all the way down to the elementary school level. I echo many of the sentiments that have already been expressed by some of the other parents, but would like to address 2 points specifically. First one, in how the lack of information that was presented prior to the passing of the policy. I think by the attendance present here tonight and much of the commentary that was addressed on social media, it came as a surprise to many parents, not just myself included. And I look for further instruction from the board or the school itself on ways that I can individually find out more about the agenda items addressed before the board before they become passed and we end up in a similar situation. I also was a little disappointed that I found out about it via social media. I'm not a big Facebook person, and to find out about things that affected my school district via Facebook and posts from other parents was disappointing, whether that was a failure on my part from failure to notice things that were before the board or just a lack of information that was presented about it. Second, I echo the sentiments that were addressed, not about the policy itself. The policy itself as written, I think can be interpreted in a variety of different ways, and I'm assuming that that was intentional, that there's allowed or wanting some flexibility in the policy to address different situations as they arise. However, the frequently asked questions page, I think in the way that the policy has either been interpreted or implemented by a variety of either teachers or school administrators, was concerning to me. I think it is far more stringent than the law in this district requires to interpret Christmas trees, Santa's ornaments and the such as somehow a religious connotation is actually directly contrary to the law in this district. All are deemed secular under the Lemon Test and have been tested in a variety of different court actions. And so I think there's some inconsistency in how it's being interpreted, and clarification in that regard for our teachers would be welcome. I'm not a teacher, I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but just given the range of what's come home from I've seen in my own household is very different. And so I do have some concerns on how it's being interpreted and that it's being interpreted too stringently. I am all for an inclusive policy. I think that it's fantastic that my 8-year-old son comes home and talks about Kwanzaa and Hanukkah, even though they are not the primary religions taught in our household. I think that as part of an education system, I will disagree with the first person that spoke in that I do see that we study social studies in school. And whether you like it or not, different traditions are reflected in part of that. I think that they should be inclusive of all of those and not excluding all of them. So those are the only comments. I do feel like I'm at a little disadvantage to do a complete public comment because I'm not really aware of what prompted the policy change, what the concerns are that it was meant to address. And I think that if there was more information published in those regards and what it is meant to accomplish, that further dialogue and further constructive dialogue could be had. As far as the social economic component, I know that was also a message that I saw in some of the Facebook posts. And again, I find it somewhat ridiculous that I am commenting at a public hearing about stuff I read on Facebook. But in that regard, I find that if there is that, I think that I absolutely want all kids to feel like they can actively participate in their classrooms. I'm just not sure that exclusion of all activities is the most efficient way to make that happen. I think maybe there could be a committee involved to find other solutions to that problem. I would volunteer to be on it because I'm a big believer in don't complain unless you're willing to do something to help advance it. Whether it's you ask parents at the beginning of the school year to make donations to a special fund that would be a lot encompassing that could be used for kids that aren't. Sometimes, birthday celebrations or bringing treats are the one time that a kid gets to feel special. And the holiday parade and Valentine's Day and things that I don't traditionally consider, I believe to be secular in nature. I don't believe them to be affiliated with a particular religion, are things that my kids really look forward to. They're things that I look forward to because it's the time when I get to come into the school and see a variety of kids and get involved in a way. I work outside the home and unfortunately I'm not able to volunteer in other ways, and those are ways in which I feel that I get to participate in what my kids do at school. So those are my only comments. If there is a way that we can find out more information about what prompted it, what it was meant to address, I'd be happy to submit comments in writing to address any of those concerns. Because I do feel like I don't want to talk out of turn for things that I just am not aware of.
Thank you. I guess addressing the concern of Michelle about the communication in the background. If you have not read the Infinite Campus response from Randy and Tim Schell, I think that that's a good source to kind of go back to. And I want to thank Mike Brandt, a board member. He put a post on the Facebook invite late today or this afternoon, Mike. I'm not sure when you put that up. I saw it later today. But he's our chair of the policy committee, and I think it gives some of the historical background when we started the discussion and some of the things that you reference. And maybe we can make that more public in other ways as well. But I appreciate your comment on those backgrounds. And Michael, you had one comment to read that was sent to you.
Yes, thanks, Joan. I'm reading a note from Mr. Tom Knox. Waunakee resident and parent. He requested that the board consider revisiting, and I'll say this because I hope he's watching on YouTube. I'm going to read this verbatim. He requested that the board consider revisiting the busing policy to be more in line with other nearby districts, as DeForest is 1.1 miles and Middleton is 1 mile. For reference, Waunakee is 1.0 miles for K through 4 and 1.75 for 5th through 12th. Mr. Knox feels that walking nearly 2 miles to and from school in Wisconsin winter on many roads that do not even have sidewalks is not only burdensome but potentially dangerous. In particular, traffic on Main Street will be a problem given it is not classified as a dangerous road that necessitates busing across to Heritage, the middle school or high school. Tom points out that many families are dual income and must leave work before schools are open to accept students, and not every family can make carpooling and or ride-sharing work. Beyond this, allowing more students to utilize busing would likely relieve congestion around the schools during major pickup and drop-off times. It is very frustrating to not be able to literally use the school buses that travel past one's own home with no option to opt in for busing, even at a cost to the family. Tom proposes allowing parents to opt in to busing for distances under the 1.75 mile limit at some fee allocated to the additional riders.
Thank you. So, kind of concluding this part of our meeting. Sure, please.
Those of you who don't know me, I'm Randy Gutenberg. I'm the superintendent for Waunakee Schools. It's one of our areas on our strategic plan is community engagement. I'm not sure this was the way we were looking to kind of bring people to our board meetings, but it certainly has engaged us around a topic that is of importance and of one that's impacting lots of folks, obviously evidenced by people being here. I think there's some things that when you look at the policy being adopted, and I've had quite a few conversations with some of you, with Joan, with other members of our administrative team. I think our intent, I think that's been a big question, is why? What needed to be changed, or what changed everything? What was the purpose? It's truly was built with this spirit of trying to be more inclusive, looking at more of the kids and more diverse needs and student backgrounds that we see coming through our school. That's part of what was the discussion. I think part of it was looking at, someone brought up socioeconomics. That is a big part for us. Our socioeconomics is our number of kids who are considered on the socioeconomically disadvantaged is relatively low compared to the state. The state average is probably, Tim, I know you probably know this off the top of your head, I think it's like 45%. Ours is like 10 or 12. So but when I put those in terms of real numbers, 10% of 4,300 kids is a lot of kids. So that's a piece that we certainly have some conversations around our table, is realizing the situation that many of our kids fall in, but also realizing that that's not the story for everyone. And so trying to figure out how can we be amenable to some of the kids who have some different needs in our community. So that's part of the conversation. So there wasn't one conversation that led to everything. It was kind of a culmination of things that brought, I guess, the topic even to the board and the policy committee. One of the things I guess I look at when we look at implementation is always the hardest part. And I think when you look at this, I think we knew when the policy was passed there was going to be a learning curve. I think there was definitely the feeling around this table, and myself and our administrative team included, to say, let's use this as, given that this was approved in October, November, what's the transition into this? What's it look like? The hard part that I think administratively we ran into was questions. And the questions weren't transitional questions. They were black and white, yes, no. And so whether we answered them correctly or not, I guess that's to be determined, but it's a process of how do you move forward with trying to take a policy as it's written, trying to keep some uniformity across our schools so that kids have similar experiences. Obviously, one of the things that I'm hearing tonight is you're having different experiences, and I get that. You have some of the concerns that have come forward, and we've heard this from our staff, is I just don't know how to do this right now, given the time frame of where we're at. So I'm going to choose to do something different. So for some of you, and look and I've got 5 children that have come to the school. I've got 3 of them still here. They have different experiences as I see as well. I mean, I see things that are coming around. Someone mentioned winter. I mean, I've seen that. I've seen one of my daughters has, it's not Secret Santa. I think they're doing Secret Snowflake in their homeroom or something of that nature. There's some ways that they're trying to be festive in different ways. My own daughter was asking me about music in the classroom. Why can't we do this, Dad? What's the conversation around? These are conversations that I think you're all having at your houses. Your kids are asking you. My kids are asking me. And I get the wonderful ability to be dad and superintendent, which they can't stand, but it's the reality of that conversation. And the pieces that I guess that we have to figure out is how do we serve all kids? Because because I love Christmas as much as everyone. I mean, that's what we celebrate in my house. When I go home tonight, that's what I will see when I walk in my door. But I also question sometimes, and that's part of the implementation piece, is how do we, in a place where kids don't have a choice, you're in 2nd grade, you're in whatever class, we're a compelling audience, you can't leave. And how do we meet the needs of all kids in that space? I don't think it's just ban everything. And that was never the intent. It was never our intent. It was never the board's intent to do that. It was certainly the intent to say, how can we make it more inclusive? And as I had kind of heard from people, as I've talked with different individuals over quite a bit of time, that was a piece I heard was, let's not get rid of things. Let's just be more inclusive of those things. But I also my staff who have chosen to do winter right now, I understand it. Because they kind of came at a time where they weren't sure what to do. And I think I heard somebody said it's kind of a risk aversion. I understand that. I also know we have staff who choose to do more and some who choose to do less. I think that there is some ability to do that. It's not the same in every 2nd grade classroom around the holidays across the district. So I'm hoping we're learning. I hope as we kind of progress through this. I know Tim Schell and I have had a number of conversations just with regards to, all right, where are we at right now, and what does this look like in the future? And we have some things that we feel we need to kind of vet out. The question about the yield log, we heard about that this weekend, and we're like, of course that's allowed. Certainly you can do that. So there was a piece that Tim followed up on right away and saying, let's clarify some of these things. They are allowed to happen. We want them to happen, particularly as they happen in the context of what we teach in school. But some of the things that you've shared here tonight, I think are things we got to take notice of. One of the things on our strategic plan, like I said, is community engagement. So what I'm hearing from many of you is, well, what's the process? How does this stuff come forward, and how do we promote that? So yeah, we can show where we've had all the postings, and we can show where we've had 7 meetings and 3 committee meetings, and it's come to 4 board meetings, and we're talking about it at a listening session here tonight. That's probably a piece for us to look at. How do we kind of bring the topics that are coming in front of the board and make them more, they're already out there, but how do you make them more informative and in places that need to be a place on social media? We've just really kind of tipped our toe into social media this way, but is this a place that we need to move forward with that? One of the things that is actually not even related to this is on our agenda for future look at as a future policy revision is really looking at our policy development. And it's about what is the language of what it takes to be adopted as a policy. And that was a separate issue than this whole, in its entirety, but it's certainly an area we'll look at. But I think taking a look at then where do we notice our meetings? How do we do that? I've looked at that policy recently too. That was really built at a time when we had paper policies. I don't have a paper policy book in my office anymore. It's all online. So I think we have to try to look at how do we do more things in the space where people are interacting. Some of you've talked about it's on Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook. I don't. That's not the world I interact with, but I know a lot of people are. when we launched our school Facebook page, it went from like 300 followers to 1,400 in like 3 days. A little bit of an exaggeration, but not much. So where do we need to be, and how can we be more open to some of the things that we're talking about? Some of the things I know Laura, you and I talked about last week, where if we're having issues, how do we brainstorm through them with parents? It's a good question. And I think part of that is, that's part of the implementation piece. Right now, we're kind of caught in this place. We're sitting here really with a few weeks open here before break. I don't know how much you can do in that time frame. But moving forward, there's other things we have to talk about. And I think there's potentially some areas of learning here as far as how can we better interact with parents on some of the things we're challenged with. Because we are challenged by these. This wasn't something that out of a whim we decided just to move forward with. It was really built off of some places that was relatively grounded in practice. And then also things that we hear from our kids. And the one thing I guess is often either a cursing or a blessing in my job is I get to see everything. I get to see the great things our kids do, and I get to see the incredibly hard things that our kids and families go through. And I think from that place is where some of these things grow. But it's also a place that we can't own all that. Maybe we have to have a place where we're talking to all of you better and find venues to have those conversations, so you can help us to maybe find out what some of those solutions are. Because sometimes we take some stances with, I guess what you can say, our minority numbers of students, but certainly kids that when we think of those issues, that's the face we have in mind. So it's from a place of caring. It's not a place of trying to hold anybody and trying to exclude things, but it's trying to be more inclusive and really trying to work in a positive way so all kids can have a great experience at school. So I feel badly that there's the angst that there is in the community about it. That wasn't our intent. I think there's some things we can learn from it. There's some things we can figure out maybe process-wise to make some of these things a little bit more open and try to be better at communicating that. But the question was, where did this arise from? It arose out of really just concerns about kids. And I guess if we're going to have a debate about something in this room, I'm hoping it's about kids. So I appreciate the comments we've heard tonight, because I know it's not, you've all got things to do on an evening besides be at a school board meeting to express concerns about some things that are happening in your school. But I do appreciate those comments, because I think from that it gives us a place to learn and to see how we can improve in a few of those other areas. So I guess with that, those are kind of my off the head topics that I just wanted to kind of share. But it's really kind of the place that I wanted you to know kind of, I guess, passionately where we're at. I mean, it's not meant to be exclusionary, it's not meant to be punitive, it's not meant to be in the ways that I know some of you are feeling. It really was meant to be as a way to be more inclusionary and to help more kids. And I think from that respect, we have some things that we can potentially learn from this, take forward, and see how we can improve some of those things moving forward.
Nice job. You said it all. It really is. It's something that I feel as a board we're still navigating through. And I do so appreciate your comments and the passion and all that you shared with us, because it does help us navigate through difficult situations. I mean, we have a policy, and then implementing that policy is yet another stage. So thank you very much for attending tonight and bringing things forward. Any other comments from the board?
Could somebody from the board address where current agenda items are currently located? I know we talk about
Yep.
but just so moving forward, we could, I know where to look.
Yeah. Can I just show them online? Can you show them, Rebecca, where we are on our website?
Mm-hmm.
Everything gets posted on our district website.
Okay.
So all of the agendas, you can go back to past meetings, all of the attachments are included.
So if you go to district, go to board, school board meetings, go to agendas. And then just click on this icon right here. And there are all the agendas that are posted. So for example, today's, when you open it up, there's the notice that was posted, the agenda, and then packets that include attachments.
And where is the notice posted?
In the Waunakee Tribune, for
Yeah.
one.
Mhm. And at every single school.
And
And
where?
that's
At
the
every
committee
single
meetings
school.
as well, that's the committee and advisory committee meetings as well, is that some of your Waunakee children?
The committees?
No,
No, committee meetings are not.
No. The committee meetings, any of our like policy committee meetings are posted in the same manner that Rebecca said. Those normally don't go into the Tribune. You're talking about advisory committee meetings. The ones that are required by open meetings law are, the ones particularly, there's been some question about kind of a teacher advisory committee around this topic. That's been one that really where administration has worked with staff, but that one does not meet the need of the open meetings law. That's really an internal committee that we have that's working through, really bringing forth questions that staff have with regards to the policy.
I'm pretty sure though, in your policies listed on the website, it does say that those meetings do need to be noticed in favor.
It's a different type of meeting. The ones that require to be posted are the ones that are appointed by the board. So that was not a committee that was ever developed as an action of the board to be established. That was one that after the board passed the policy, we knew there would be a number of questions. So we established administratively really an advisory committee that had reps from every building just to bring forward questions.
So then, please clarify again, then
Sure.
what you're saying, so the board, I believe, has officially put together the policy committees and all the other committees.
Right.
Don't those meetings need to get noticed in the paper and their agenda put in the paper as well, besides the regular board meeting?
I think what we have is our regular board meetings are all noticed in the paper. The committees are required to be publicly noticed, but I'm not certain that those need to be published in the Tribune. The Tribunes are placed in our dispository for all of our regular meetings and our special meetings, but not necessarily for committee meetings. But all the work of committees that has actions has to come through the board for action. So nothing can happen in a committee where a committee votes. That committee only has the power to vote to recommend something to the full board. So if the policy, we're talking about that this evening, as this policy made its way through, it was voted on at committee, and that vote simply moved it to the full board level. There have been items that have never made it out of committee that never make it to the full board.
Just one note with Rebecca, you were showing that too. I noticed the other day, there's a calendar view of the upcoming meetings. And Mike brought to my attention in an email that there was a policy meeting this week, and I said, wait a second, I didn't see that listed. So as of the other day, that wasn't in that calendar view. The notice was in your book board view. So
Okay.
that's something to make sure you're checking, because some people might not go to those notices
Sure.
unless they see it in the calendar view.
The other piece, Michelle, that Rebecca and I talked about this today as we kind of went back and looked at where is everything posted? How is it posted? How do you find it? And the conversation that she and I had was that there's some different things we maybe want to do to get them to a point where they're a little bit easier to find. We can put a quick links piece on the front of the page. We have that for some areas, so that if you want to see how to get to them, that they can be a little bit easierly accessible than having to go in 2-3 clicks deep into the website.
How frequently does the board meet and how far in advance is the agenda posted?
Oh, good question. The school board meets usually once a month. It's always the second Monday of the month. That agenda is always posted in the previous week's Tribune. And then we release the packet to the board, and everything is up on the website usually by the Wednesday before. I think this week it was Thursday, but it's usually in that time frame.
So one last question. I appreciate you hearing our thoughts. I'm curious what next steps are then, as far as, and that probably entails more conversation too. As far as the implementation part, I do appreciate you elaborating on the intent,
Right.
but then next steps, because right now we're in the middle of probably the most obvious
Yeah.
situation that teachers apparently are very confused about what the board's intent was.
Yeah.
So where do we go from now, and how can we help?
That's what we're trying to process through, I'll be honest with you. I don't have an answer off the top right now to say this is exactly what the plan is of how that's gonna look. One of the things that we want to get some feedback on is, it probably starts with our staff to understand a few perspectives from them as far as what they've done, not done, why did they do things that they did or didn't. I think there's some of those initial questions. I think then it's moving forward and saying, all right, if we're looking at how can we, and what do staff need in order to be able to maybe do what they feel, which is in line with the policy, but that is more in line with what they would like to see in their classroom. How do we provide some of that? Tim and I have had some of those dialogues as well, as far as how does that look from a curricular standpoint. So I think that's part of where that follow-up is. And then I think we'll need to work that forward. But trying to find out where are some of these ways that parents can be involved, that's another piece that we want to have some discussion about. I don't have a perfect answer for you to lay out for you what the next step is, but that's really the gist of what I see as our next part is. We're, as you're aware, this is something that we're working through right now, and I think we'll be having to listen as far as we're doing tonight and some of the things over the last few weeks that we've been able to glean from that. We'll do the same thing with our staff and then see what that looks like moving forward.
Thank you. Moving on with our next part of the agenda, we have reports, and starting with our student report. Renee and Sophie.
Hello there, everybody. So we had some printer problems. Surprising. So we have the notes, but I have 4 and I believe Sophie has 3. So I'll let you start and then I will go ahead.
So first up is Principals Council, and they are working on a new school statement. Apparently the teachers have been sending in ideas, and the Principals Council will just give input and try to frame it. This is the first new one in about 10 years. We've had the same one for a while, so that's kind of exciting. And also, they are starting to choose who will come to talk for the prom assembly we have right before, like the week before prom, like we do every year, and they're just debating which one they think will get the best response. I know the one before homecoming was really great this year, and I think they got a hand in choosing that one too. And they're also working on how to promote recycling in the high school. There's been some issues and it hasn't been as effective in the past, but they're thinking about making signs or just more access to the recycle bins and kind of make it more obvious which one's which and how to better use it. Okay, up next is the music department, and they just had a booster set up where I think through all the schools that have music departments did fruit sales. So kids took the packets home and would sell a bunch, and it went all back to the music boosters, which then put it back into the program. And I know it's been really effective in the past few years, like the percussion section in the high school just got all brand new drums, and that was the first time it's happened in a really long time. So we're very appreciative of that. And they're also talking about trying to do another musical this year in the spring. Usually it's every other year, and we had them this past spring, but they're thinking about trying to do Fiddler on the Roof. So we'll see how that goes. And finally, I have SCCLA, who are working on their pancake breakfast for Santa, where they can invite kids to come. They pay a little bit, and they come in, they can see Santa and get a free breakfast. Don't know how that's working, actually.
That's a
All the parents laugh.
They're like, that's a
I think
weekend.
that's happening.
It's not bad.
I don't think that's been banned. I should really double check.
It's all good. Yeah, that one's all approved to be distributed, sure.
Well, that's close. So So starting off, Above the Influence, actually, to build off of what Sophie had mentioned, we are actually hopping back to the homecoming speaker, and we're doing something kind of fun to kind of rev his message back into the high school. We're hoping to do, we sent out a big survey, and it's basically what song inspires and empowers you, to get people to kind of create the soundtrack of their life, so they have things that inspire and empower them, and we're using music to do that. Our hope is that we get a bunch of positive responses from all the high school students and can put up a fun little Spotify playlist. We're hoping to do like posters like this big and have people's songs all around the school, so everybody kind of gets an idea of what their friends and maybe other people that they don't really know listen to help inspire them and empower them and kind of get the whole high school involved. So we're really excited about that, and we're hoping to kick that off either next week or the following week after Christmas break. FFA also, which is Future Farmers of America, we're using a lot of abbreviations today. They just had a barn dance with the Poinet and DeForest FFAs as well, so that was really exciting for them. They're also doing a dip fundraiser, so they are selling fruit, vegetable, and dessert dips to help fundraise for their program. So that is hoping to be a huge success. Next is the math team. The math team actually has their first meet coming up on Wednesday, so this is basically perfect timing. They have 11 people on their varsity team and 2 on their JV team, because basically the qualifications are that you have to be in pre-calc or above to be on, I think it's FST, pre-calc and above, our varsity, and advanced algebra and below, or JV. So there's no real way to kind of like up yourself unless you're in a different math class. So they're competing in a Madison school district. The person that I talked to isn't sure where, which is kind of exciting because there's 4 different schools. So like it's one of the 4 Madison schools.
They're just going to get on the bus.
Exactly. She's like, I'm getting on the bus and I'm doing some math. And I'm like, that sounds really exciting. Not my idea of a Wednesday night, but if that's yours, you go. But yeah, they're really excited for that. And FBLA, although something small, they just did a Miracle Minute at last Friday's boys basketball game. They fundraised for March of Dimes, and they said all of the proceeds that they made from that Miracle Minute are going to the March of Dimes, which is awesome. And finally, we have Student Council. We are starting our JDRF fundraising, so we're hoping to kind of get ahead of the 8 ball this year because we've been really behind in the last few years with getting, like, communicating with our businesses and stuff like that. So we're hoping to get all of our businesses done before December 21st so everybody can enjoy their Christmas break and have everything ready to go. And that's been going super well. That'll be going on in January. We'll be at 1 boys hockey game, 1 boys basketball game, and 1 girls basketball game. And we do an auctioning off a variety of different raffle baskets and prizes, and all of the proceeds go to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And lastly, this is something that's going to go along with all the public comments, so I'm a little afraid, but we had an officer meeting this morning, and a lot of the officers were expressing a little bit of concern because for the last few years we've been doing call and elf, and we've heard that we're not allowed to do call and elf anymore, and I think some of the kids were a little frustrated, and we were feeling a little bit of frustration because it does occur on a weekend, and it is very optional for students. It's also secular, so there's no affiliation with Christmas. It's just in hopes to get kids to call and talk to an elf and tell us what they want for Christmas or any holiday in any holiday season. Clarification, it can be any holiday. We were trying
Or
to figure
just a
out,
wish for the new year.
exactly.
And their parents know what they want, so it's great.
Exactly. We were hoping to also kind of, we tried to like make it not an elf, but we struggled because we tried to make it make a wish, and we were like, but we don't want to be like granting wishes because we can't give them that wish, so we can't guarantee that it's going to happen. So we just wanted to bring that up to the school board, and a lot of the officers were talking about that and seeing if we could actually do call an elf, or if that would be something we need to find a different way to.
I don't see call and elf any different than we're doing the pancake breakfast on Sunday.
Sounds good. So I can tell them that we're good to go? Perfect. Thank you guys so much. I think that's all we have for you. I shared the document with Rebecca, so you will get a copy of it this month, I promise. I could not get the sharing rights to work for the life of me for the last 2 days, so fingers crossed you guys will have it soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you guys.
Ladies. Zero.
We do have a second student report from Pay It Forward. Karina. And students, I love it.
Good evening. I'm Karina Rogers, the advisor for Pay It Forward and a high school social studies teacher. And we've got Alex White here, our club president, and Jenya Christensen, who's our vice president. So we just want to talk to you about Pay It Forward a little bit today, kind of give you an update of what we've been up to. Well, first of all, just kind of give you who we are. A student fundraising and volunteer organization committed to improving the lives of people locally, nationally, and internationally through donations and service. So I started the club in 2008 with your pilot approval in the first year and went gangbusters from there. I started out with 9 members in 2008, and now there's more than 200 that say they're a member. But Alex and Jenya lead every Friday in the cave. We have over 100 members. So even if they're not active every month, they are there and helping at meetings and doing good work. So speaking of that good work, the ladies are going to walk through kind of our calendar year for you.
So as Ms. Rogers said, I'm Jenya, and we're just kind of going to go over what we do each month, because each month we do have different projects to raise money and give back to the community in one way or another.
Yeah.
So we start our year off in September, and we do football concessions, which is a huge money raiser. And we also have our club org fair, which we have this poster, a similar one, and we recruit members. And each year, as Ms. Rogers said, tons of people sign up, over 200. And we're really lucky to be one of the clubs that people do commit to us, and they come to our meetings, and people do help out. And finally, we do Oktoberfest. My freshman year, I popped kettle corn and sold it. It was a lot of fun. It's just really great to be out in the community volunteering, giving your time to a good cause.
And then in October, we harvest pumpkins, and we also are like a really big part of Food for Kids. So this year as a fundraiser, we did Change for Change. So we met directly with the people that were in charge of Food for Kids, and I think we raised a good amount of money, which helped buy food and stuff in bulk for the packaging. Then we also volunteered there, so we had 2 tables, so 20 people, and it was super fun for everyone. And it's a good way to get everyone involved. It's something easy to do to volunteer with. And then we also help out with Trick or Treat for UNICEF, and we had a goal of $1,000 this year, and I think we got $800 just through our club members. So that was a huge deal for us, raise all that money for everyone.
So then in November, we do try to provide some holiday dinners, and another thing we do in November is Kiva loans. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what Kiva loans are, people internationally post problems or situations they're in. One that we did recently, a man's wife was pregnant and they didn't have the funds to take her to a hospital. And so we donated some money, and he was able to get his wife to a hospital, and they pay those loans back. So we get those loans back, and what we do with that money is then we give it back to the Kiva loan. So it's really a nice cycle of giving and them being able to do things. It's not just those. Another thing we did is a woman wanted to go to vet school. A man wanted to buy pigs to sell to his community. So you really see this, ripple effect of us helping one person and them helping one person, and before you know it, you're changing the world. So.
And then December is our huge month, so we have a lot going on. So we volunteer at the Rotary Lights 2 nights, normally 2 or 3 nights, and we sing out there and sing carols. And normally there's a coloring contest going on, so we take the little coloring sheets from the kids and we sing carols to them. And then when they go away, we're enjoy the lights. So that's our big thing. Give out candy canes and all that. And then we also recently just shopped for WNC families, so we adopt 1 to 3 families. So we had 3 families this year, and they have needs and wants and lists of what they want. So this year we had a family of 5, I think, a family of 3. Yeah, so I can just read out some of the stuff. So the mom wanted a scarf and a Nike sweatshirt and socks, and then it's that stuff that they need, and that's normal stuff that people should have around the holidays. And she wanted a Carrie Underwood CD, so we were able to get that for her. And they have a son. It's range of age, so it's 18 years old to 9 years old. And the kid wanted cars or a Toy Story puzzle, so it's just little things we can give back. And then the family needs, so they wanted a griddle and cookie sheets, which is good for the holidays for them to celebrate. And then we had a whole nother family who needed a variety of things like gas and grocery carts. We were able to give them that for the holidays, which is necessary. And then also we have a wrapping party, so we decorate all those gifts and we wrap them. It's a fun thing for our club. And then we also decorate the lockers every year, so we come up with a fun little saying, and we have a candy that we put on everyone's lockers, and we do that 6:30 in the morning. So it's nice to get everyone involved in the school.
So January and February are pretty similar. We slow down because we're in high school, we have finals, and and it's really hard to get people to volunteer, when they're studying. So we slow down, and after December, which is our really big month, it's nice to have a little break, and we just do a lot of basketball concessions, which is, again, like very similar to football, just an easy way to raise money. People come, they want concessions. Give them their concessions. So.
And then in March, we normally hold something for the intermediate school kids. So before it was a dance, and now we do like a game night for them. So it's like a fun little place they can come and listen to music, and we have games. And it's like fun for them to interact with high school kids, so they get to talk to us about like high school, and we get to like interact with them. And then actually this Friday, we're talking to them about what it means to like pay it forward in the school. So I think it's good. You can start them young and get them involved in the club right away. And then we also donate to Heifer International. So this past year, Heifer International is like, you can donate money to like, so a family can get like a pig or some chickens. And then last year we donated a full ark. So it was like a variety of stuff. So it was like 5 cows and like
$5,000.
Yeah, it was $5,000. So we donated like cows, chickens, like totally random stuff, and it like helps communities like kind of like feed themselves. Like they get eggs and they get milk and everything. So it's really like so they can be self-sustainable.
So April is when we plant our garden, which is the Garden of Dreams. Any of you who live in Waunakee have probably seen our Garden of Dreams. It's right by the softball field, and it's actually getting pretty big. So every year we get a whole bunch of people, and we go down and we plant these vegetables. So you may be wondering, what do you do with these vegetables? Well, in June or whenever these fruits and vegetables are ready, we pick them all and we give them to WNC. So these people are given fresh produce, and it's a lot of fun to get the club together. We go out, but it's not just that. We also host, not events, but younger students can come and help garden. So WNC has like a student summer camp kind of thing for younger students, and they come and they help plant, and they help weed, and the orchestra students come and they help. So it's not just pay it forward working on this Garden of Dreams, it's the whole school district. So.
And we actually just recently applied for a grant for $500 to start a compost program in our school, and we got that grant a couple weeks ago. So we're meeting tomorrow to kind of like get all of like other clubs involved. So we're getting like FFA involved, we're getting the DECA involved to kind of like have the whole school involved in something, so that's kind of special. And then we also help with the plant garden and like the garage sale like weekend. So the FFA, they do like a plant sale, so we'll like help them out with that type of stuff. So it's really good getting everyone involved in the school.
So then the school year ends, and in June we keep working on the Garden of Dreams. In July, again, we're just working on the Garden of Dreams, and we do the Waunafest Parade. So before the Waunafest Parade, you see all those no parking signs. That's us. We get up very early and we put those signs up. So the parade goes on. We put those the different floats in order, in line, so everything runs smoothly. You can see us with our walkie-talkies and our bright orange jackets. Yeah, we're making sure everything's going, keeping on schedule. And then after the parade, we go through and take it all down. So
we do a variety of things that get other clubs involved in the school, and it's a really good club to be in to kind of help the community and volunteer in an easy way.
Thank you.
So, lastly, what kind of prompted us to give you an update was most recently, again, the girls told you how we shop for 9 family members of 3 different families, and we've been doing that for 9 years. And recently, when I turned in my $1,500 Shopco receipt that I used my credit card for, there was concern that maybe this is going to be a concern at some point, and buying gas cards for people and Piggly Wiggly cards. And in terms of our local donations, I can't see any other way to do it. These families are anonymous to us. They don't give us a receipt. They don't know who we are, we don't know who they are. And we do get the most incredible, oh, they're in my bag. I can't read them anyway because they make me cry. But the most beautiful, heartfelt thank yous, down to a 5-year-old child drawing us a picture, and 9-year-olds thanking us for literally every item on their list. How warm and cozy the socks are. You know, every single item that we've bought them. And then we always go above and beyond. There's needs and there's wants, and then we surprise them. And so I just don't see, in terms of helping local families, how we could do that with any documentation. When there's families in crisis in the community, Isabel Dunai, Cole Shep, families that have lost their homes to fire and they're displaced, we help those folks out immediately, as quickly as we can. So nationally and internationally, we can get a receipt from UNICEF and the Red Cross and all the other organizations that we give to, but when it's local, those families are in crisis or they're anonymous, and I don't know how we would continue to be as supportive to the community as we are if that was taken away.
So what are you asking the board?
Just to, I hope that policy, speaking of policies, doesn't get altered, because we couldn't do what we do. And Alex spent, she's my TA, spent today looking since 2008 with Barb Sellerson's help and tallied how much money since 2008. Any drum rolls? All right. I was a drummer. $68,932. No, $68,932.66.
So,
Yeah.
So Karina, if we can just talk a little bit about
Yeah.
gift cards. Some of those things came out of our audit, as far as, so that there can be a tracking of where dollars go. Now, I think we've also reviewed some of that. So I don't know if I can just, I'm gonna put Steve on the spot here for a second just to talk a little bit about gift cards, as I think we kind of had a procedure in place and we've kind of backed off of that a bit. So it should, I believe, allow you to do what you're doing. But I'm gonna let Steve talk about it, because that's more of his world.
Sure, thanks, Randy. So for those who want to stick around for agenda item E1, financial audit, we'll be reviewing what we did receive from our CPA firm. And one of the items that they just called to our attention was that we don't currently have requirements in place for documentation for all of the gift cards. So our auditors did note that. That certainly doesn't mean as a school board you need to change your policy. Right now, our policy allows gift card purchases from non-taxpayer funds. This club is an example. So our current policy allows it, but you will see when we get to agenda E1, our auditors are calling that to your attention, that gift card purchases are allowed by our policy, and in many cases don't have documentation because of what was just described. The intent would be to have the discussion with either the policy committee or the budget committee of the board to have a conversation about what the reaction is, board members, that you do or do not have based on the comment provided by the auditors in the audit report.
If you could put some checks and balances in there to say, okay, spent money on this gift card, and maybe 2 people sign off to say that they're going to you someplace. So you get some checks and balances.
Can I talk about the holiday policy?
Absolutely.
I couldn't resist myself. Can I just say something quickly? Yeah. I think I have a unique perspective as a mother, a teacher, and a former free and reduced lunch child. I decorated the Christmas tree and got all the ornaments out for the kids, and I make them little piles even though they're 19, 17, and 15 years old. And I say, it's your turn to hang up yours that I've bought you and that they've made at school. And I was just thinking, as they were doing that, it would be so sad to me if future Waunakee families didn't have those homemade at-school ornaments. And I think as a teacher, I think it'd be incredibly easy to make what you make an option. So choices for different religions and beliefs. I'm a social studies teacher. I respect them all. I teach about them all, but we don't make ornaments usually in high school. But we do talk about those when I teach world history. And so I think that'd be really easily done. And then lastly, just as a kid who was incredibly poor, going to school was the great equalizer. So being included in my classroom and respected by my peers and being a part of those parties, because I didn't get those things at home, but at school we got to have that celebration, and I got to be a part of that, and it wouldn't have happened at home. So I appreciate it, and it's because of those teachers that I have these girls and do what I do now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? When you do this, how do you find these families? Is it through WNC?
How do I find what?
The families
Yes,
that this
they
goes to.
they make their lists for them, and then we take them shopping. I think 16 kids went to Shaka with me this year, and then the next day we had 30 or 40 kids wrapping all the gifts.
So how are the kids identified? I mean, how do you get their names?
From WNC.
From WNC?
Yeah.
Okay. So
No,
with
we
seeing
don't
the
have their
gift card
names, we
thing,
just-
would you simply, WNC signs off saying, yeah, it went there?
Yeah.
Now we know where it went.
Yeah,
That
right.
seems to be the
Yeah.
only question that the
Yeah.
auditors.
That would work.
It's just the fear that the gift cards went.
Disappeared.
Right.
Yeah.
But
The- although-
WNC would seem to be a third party
Right.
that
Yeah.
could sign off.
Yeah.
And then we're done.
Yeah.
With all the gifts, when we take them to them, it's I don't know how they organize it. It's difficult. We label the gifts like 9-year-old boy, 12-year-old girl,
Right.
and then try to keep it as organized as we can in our bags, but it's all wrapped. The gift cards we often tape into the handmade cards that we make them. So, yeah.
I'm
that's
sure we can come up with something
Yes.
that's, works for everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
ladies.
you, ladies. Next, we have our teacher update. Kyle and Ashley.
So we'll keep ours very brief because we're not as interesting to listen to as all the students that just came up here. November was a really busy month for the WCA. As you know, negotiations happened during that month, which has now been ratified. It was the first time in a long time that some concerns were raised and that we had some pushback on that, so just a thought for you to carry forward. Secondly, recertification also took place last month. Overwhelmingly, again, we voted, or the staff voted to have the Waunakee Teachers Association as its collective bargaining unit. I believe it was 89% of those who voted, actually 89% of all.
99% of voters
There it was.
voted to recertify the WTA.
There you go. And then that's all I have.
And I get the fun stuff. So we are continuing to work on the shed that we are building for the WNC. The shed itself has completed. We're working on fundraising in order to pay for the shed. So just recently, we volunteered doing concessions at the girls gymnastics competition on December 4th. And we'll be back doing concessions this Friday at wrestling. And then another thing that we had just established or to do again this year is to offer a scholarship to students going into education. So once again, we will offer, it's a $300 scholarship for students pursuing education.
One note on that shed is it was also constructed by members of a high school course, so really cool involvement from all the different parts of Waunakee Community School District. So I believe that is our update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And our last report is from board members, if anybody has attended any trainings or events that they'd like to share with the board. If not, we will move on to the strategic planning part, starting with our long-range facility plan, and Mark Crawford.
Not sure if I see Mark here yet. He was coming from another meeting. You've seen him come in at us. If we can go to the academic and career plans first, and then we'll come back.
Sure. So the academic and career plans by Michelle and Tim.
Give them a chance to make their way forward, and Rebecca can pull up their presentation.
Yep.
Then we'll come back to Mark's report once he arrives. Hey, Michelle.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm Tim Shaw, your Director of Instruction, and this is
Michelle McGlynn, School of Career and Career and Tech Ed Coordinator, high school.
And we're here to provide a brief update on academic and career planning. That's one of our items on our strategic plan. And thank you. Oh, go. So we're just going to kind of cut through a few things here, the relationship on the strategic plan, some of the 101 on academic and career planning, or from an acronym perspective, an ACP, what we've done and what we have coming up. So first of all, this is our current strategic plan. If you look all the way down and to the left, you can see academic and career planning. And this was on the previous iteration of the strategic plan. We did a lot of the heavy lifting in the last 2 years, and we're really more in kind of a final stage of implementation now. So kind of the mission statement for academic and career planning is that students will develop individualized academic and career plans to guide their learning and future planning. And you know, our district, we've had a lot of these elements in place for a long time, but academic and career planning is a statewide initiative, and there's some new elements that we've brought into our already existing foundation as a result of what is overall being accomplished in Wisconsin. So the idea behind academic and career planning is, like so many things that we do, it all begins with a student. What are the student's interests? What are their passions? Where are they at in terms of skills? And this is really a process that begins about midway through their academic career here, although certainly they're formative activities that happen in our elementary schools. And that helps guide their course planning and activities planning at the secondary level, and then as they move through high school, it helps guide them on their pathways beyond graduation. So traditionally, I think in our district, and I think many of us here, all participated perhaps in a 4-year traditional plan in high school. It was based on our courses, our elective courses, what we might be doing in CTE or career and technical education. And a lot of the time, that discussion was, how do I complete my 4 years and get to graduation? And while there might have been some conversations about what opportunities might exist beyond graduation, those might have been more limited, and they didn't always filter back through to a student's high school courses and even earlier. Now, the vision for academic and career planning is that it's more process-based. Students are introduced to different interests and careers earlier, and hopefully that's infused into all of the courses. High school graduation obviously is a huge step. It's when we say goodbye to our students, but for them in their development, it's really just a checkpoint. And so career development is something that we try to spend more attention to earlier and across more of the classes. It's not only solely, for example, middle or high school counselor thing. And so part of the organizing framework that DPI has for this is kind of the know, explore, plan, and go. In a sense, it's heavier on the know and some of the earlier grades, but the process of doing kind of interest inventories and asset inventories goes on all the way through the process. I think the key thing is we want kids thinking about careers early, but if you notice in go, recalculate as needed. The intention of this is never to have a student feel like they're pigeonholed into a future at any point in middle school or high school. It's really just to help them have good information for their future.
All right, and then I get the fun part of telling you what we're doing. One of the things that's not on here because I didn't find out about it until this weekend, last year or even a little bit earlier, DPI got a significant grant from JP Morgan Chase to develop 4 regional career pathways throughout the state of Wisconsin. And these councils work at DPI, but they work in their regions with industry, with community, and with K-12 partners in order to find careers that are hot careers in Wisconsin and try to implement kind of this whole big process and this whole team aspect of putting together that K-12 initiative to partner with the industry. And their first initiative was construction. And with our regional pathway, and given the fact that our high school is really moving forward with some new construction ideas, I did apply several weeks ago to be one of the lead schools as a high school in that career regional pathway for construction, and we were approved. So that's really good news for our high school. At this point, I think what it really is going to entail for us, we'll be part of this stakeholder committee where we'll get some input on kind of this pathway and how we're going to help our students with it. But also industries will be able to look at this and say, wow, you know, a Dave Jones or a Hotman Construction or Viridian Homes will be able to look at these pathway sheets as industry partners and say, wow, Waunakee is one of their leading schools. So it's kudos to our high school program for what they're doing in the construction program that got us kind of in this point here. What else we're doing, our high school curriculum, homeroom. This was probably a hard sell to some of our homeroom teachers. As you know, at the high school, we have homeroom every Monday, and then contact time Tuesday through Friday. So our idea was on those Monday homerooms where we're developing these really strong relationships with our homeroom students that we have for 4 years, was to implement some of those ACP activities through there. That was an easy way to do it without taking away instructional time from our teachers. So last year we implemented this in all 4 grade levels through the homerooms for about 4 months. And we set up a curriculum, we gave it to all of the homeroom teachers. Brian Kirsten and myself tried to hold the teachers and the students accountable. Teachers came up with some unique ways, free movie tickets if they got all of their activities done. You know, I'll order donuts for you and bring them in if we have the entire homeroom that gets all these done. So they tried to offer some incentives as well. And we posted all of the curriculum on the high school website. We emailed staff, we emailed students. We tried to make it as easy and seamless as possible for them. And Barb Fosbender and I worked really hard to put together this curriculum to help those students through, in this case, we use career cruising pretty much. The next step would be to start using Naviance a little more, and if you don't know what Naviance is, it's the program that we use for the students to apply to schools. They have the Common App on there, submit letters of recommendation. So there's a lot of career pieces to that program as well. So this will get our students in that program a little bit more and a little bit earlier than senior year when they're starting to think about going to college. The other big thing that we did just last week, it was a long day for some of us, was our middle school ACP day. And so the morning, every single one of our 8th grade students was bused over to the Alliant Energy Center where our 2nd annual Future Quest was held. Future Quest was an initiative by the Dane County School Consortium that I am part of the steering committee on. We planned this in order to get students in the Alliant Energy Center to explore lots of different career options and all the different career pathways. It's not a job fair. Obviously, they're 8th grade students, so they don't want to go around and get business cards. So our ask of every business who chooses to come and pays to exhibit is to have some sort of hands-on activity. I wish you all could have been there. First of all, they have 8th graders all over the place was something, quite a sight to see. But to see, you know, SWAT vehicles and to have construction robotics in there and to have, last year there was a group that had students build a pergola. So they had hammers and they had all the lumber, so it was all hands-on activities. And the students go around and they get to ask questions, there's literature, they get to do activities, so it's really a hands-on event for them. They get 2 hours there, and we do this all day long, and the Dane County schools just rotate in and out of the center all day. So we had the morning session this year, and Barb and I worked with Ty Jury, because Ty was like, let's do something with these kids in the afternoon. So we put our heads together, and we decided, okay, in the afternoon, we invited in a representative from Madison College, from UW-Platteville, which also now encompasses UW-Sauk and UW-Richland, 2-year campuses, and then myself, and we gave presentations at the high school to talk about post-secondary options. Obviously, Madison College has that technical piece, UW-Platteville the 4, and the 2-year piece, and then I was able to talk about apprenticeships and some of the careers and trades. And then the cool part of the afternoon was students at the middle school stayed in their homerooms, and I invited in several of our top students in all different career pathways and put them into teams to rotate around to the homerooms, delivering a presentation 12 times to all 12 homerooms about high school classes that would support all the different pathways, organizations to join, work-based learning experiences. And our ag students brought down I don't know, was it a gerbil or a hamster or something? Then our STEM kids, when they saw that Ag was bringing down an animal, ran to the Innovation Center and grabbed a whole bunch of 3D prints to take down there because they didn't want to be showed up. We had quite a few emails from middle school teachers who said, by far, that high school presentation was phenomenal. Because obviously it was coming out of the mouth of high school students, and those middle school students were very engaged with that. So that was overall a very successful day for our 8th graders. And then, obviously in progress is the added course that we're going to try to get into 7th grade. We want to add Ag Education and Business and Marketing Ed as a required course for all 7th graders to add to our existing Tech Ed and Family Consumer Science. Adding an elective semester of Ag and Business Marketing down the road for all 8th graders. And again, if you're looking at career pathways, we're missing the boat on a lot of clusters by not having those 2 areas represented at the middle school. And what we're having is students who come into the high school level in an introductory 9th grade course, this is the first time that they're actually going to see anything business or Ag related. Both business and Ag CTSOs have middle school offerings. As far as challenges, the seniors, we need some buy-in from them because they know they're graduating. Why do I have to do ACP activities? I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going, and it's all going to work out no matter what happens. Some of the high school staff struggle with holding students accountable. There was considerable planning for our team to develop the curriculum, but overall, we thought we did a pretty good job of coming up with some good things. Opportunities. Obviously, we're finding that a lot of staff and students are now developing a sense of the value of ACP and why it matters. And again, some feedback from that 8th grade day. So we are continuing for our next step is ACP implementation for our 6th graders, refining that 8th grade day for next winter, continuing our high school curriculum, and looking at some possible revisions for our website, and then possibly adding an ACP newsletter. Questions? Mark?
No question, just a comment. I was somewhat skeptical 2.5 years ago when this came down from the DPI, and knowing what the model we had in, which had served a great purpose and with some success, but was sort of a one and done through the career workshop model. And what this has morphed into, a couple weeks ago at our curriculum presentations, hearing Barb talk about how the counseling is involved at multiple levels, looking at the expansion into the middle school. I can't commend you guys enough for the dynamic program you have created, which really has given our kids year after year after year opportunities to explore and change their vision and to finally embrace something that will give them a sense of purpose. So, job well done.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Definitely a real gift for our kids. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving backward, I see Mark came in, Mark Backward.
Yep.
Going back to our long-range facility plan.
So the next presentation that's up is our long-range facility plan update. Steve and I have been working with Mark Roffers. You've all seen Mark quite a few times over the last few years as we've looked at facility and growth planning. And what Mark is able to provide to us tonight is some of the work that we've been putting together over the last few months to upgrade our enrollment projections and some of the critical needs that we have and growth that's occurring and what our next steps need to be. So Mark presented to the facilities committee, and this is a large part of our piece moving forward into future meetings. So we thought tonight would be a good time to really kick off our update, and I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thank you. And thanks for accommodating my schedule tonight. I appreciate that. There's a new 29-unit apartment building going up in Maple Bluff on Sherman Avenue. That's where I was before. Just to kind of loop you back first, this is all part of your strategic planning framework and implementation, facilities planning, and reviewing that on an annual basis is really part of carrying out the strategic plan. Tonight is a summary of the presentation I gave at the facilities committee the other night.
What I'd like to do is review some prior efforts, get everyone back up to speed on long-range facility planning, talk a little bit about how the housing market and demographics have changed in the Waunakee, Westport area over the last year or so. Review our student enrollment projections, which were updated last year, and then talk about potential implications, at which point I'll turn it over back to Randy to kind of guide you home on that matter. First, to get you back a little bit into the past, about 5 years ago, the board adopted a long-range facility study. That study featured, at that point in time, enrollment projections for from both the Applied Population Lab and our little company. We compared that to the capacity of the existing schools, worked with the board on a variety of options, and from that developed a 15 to 25-year facility plan. That 2014 plan had some implementation steps. These were steps after the first step, which was the construction of the new intermediate school. So towards the latter part of the 20-teens, the recommendation was to monitor the enrollment at the middle school, which was felt to be the next school that needed attention. And in fact, back in 2014, based on the projections we had at the time, we expected the district may need a new middle school by around the year 2020, next year or the year after that. And there's a place on the intermediate school site for that. Upon completion, some of the lower high school grades, one or more, could have relocated to the current middle school building. There's probably space for more than just that function. And then the other step that was advised in the 2014 plan, sometime between 2020 and 2030, was to build the district's fourth elementary school. So that's where we were in 2014. 2 years ago today, or this month, the board agreed us to do a few things. And they were related a little bit to the fact that we had seen enrollment at the middle school level grow a little bit more slowly than we had anticipated back in 2014. So we did another survey of new single-family permittees to see if our hunches were correct, that the demographics in your area are changing a little bit, and I'll have some more on that in a second. We were asked to monitor the impacts of a grade bubble that at that time were third graders and will be seventh graders in a few years. The board agreed that based on some of the things that had been happening, we should update the enrollment projections we did back. Really they were projections done in 2012 for the 2014 facility plan. And then get back together last year at this time to see whether it is or was time to start talking about middle school planning. When we got together last year, the conclusions of that meeting are on screen here, that one of the next steps to discuss was to remodel additional classrooms at Heritage Elementary when that school approaches its capacity of its finished classrooms. So we'll talk more about that as we progress here in that discussion tonight. The Arboretum and the two other schools continue to have an imbalance in enrollment versus capacity each year. As you know, Arboretum essentially fills up, and late-coming students get assigned to one of two of the other elementary schools. We talked about last year about that being an ongoing issue that would have to be addressed fully and finally at some point in the future. And then we talked from last year that the need for the fourth elementary school, well, we thought it would be about 2025 when we were back in 2014. That may be pushed back to the late 2020s based on revised enrollment projections. Moving up the grades served by your district at the intermediate school, as I think we had hoped, it will serve needs until about 2030. And there's a classroom expansion that was built into the plans for the original school that could be made at that time. And one of the major outcomes, probably should be bolded, is that there was in fact no need to begin planning for a new middle school as we were sitting here last year at this time. There was other discussion related to the middle school last year that possibly there could be a short-term project that would add a secured entry and minor classroom expansion. It might postpone the need to build a new middle school for a couple of years. And that might relate more closely to when the high school might start to approach its capacity, which is quite a few years further out. So that's in a few minutes where we were and how we got to where we are tonight. I'd like to turn a little bit to talk about what's going on in demographics and housing in your area, just in summary form. Talk first about the village, what's happening in the village of Waunakee generates the most students for your district. In 2017, the sale price of existing homes was about $385,000. That's the highest in Dane County. So you're an upper end housing market. There's new housing coming online, and it's considerably more, priced considerably higher than $384,000 in general. And the development has been pretty consistent over the past 5 or 6 years. The village has issued somewhere between 89 and 97 new permits per year. They're on pace this year to do the same, which is significant because elsewhere in Dane County and beyond, the building activity is down this year. Residential activity is down. Village of Waunakee has had a new multiple family building project every 2 to 4 years. Doesn't generate nearly as many students per unit, but if you have 60, 70 units in a building, that can be a generator. Existing subdivisions have built out steadily, and as we look forward to the next couple of years in terms of what we might see break ground, the first homes in the Westbridge Farms addition, that would be north of Copp Road, north of Westbridge, are scheduled to be constructed next year. And then Arboretum Village, the planned development just north of Arboretum Elementary essentially, is scheduled to see its first homes a year after that. Beyond the village of Waunakee, Bishop's Bay is developing at a steady pace. It's been going at about 25 new single-family homes per year. They've all been in, except for 3 now, in the Middleton portion of that development. The high point was 36 in 2017. There's about half of that many that have been permitted this year in Bishop's Bay. And in the Westport side of things, on the east end, the development has yet to take off. There's 3 homes up, they're spec homes. Beyond that, we don't see a significant amount of residential development activity. So it's really about Village of Waunakee and Bishop's Bay. So what's going on in sort of the world of demographic change? Who's occupying those new housing units? The conclusion that we've drawn is that households in the Waunakee school district area are getting older and smaller. A lot of the folks that came here in the early 90s, early 2000s have had kids. Their kids are growing up. Some of them are leaving home, sadly. And but the parents are sticking around for a while. And I think that's not a phenomenon that you're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years continue to take place here. That's evidenced by some of the data that we're seeing. This is an age pyramid we put together with the Applied Population Lab last year. It shows that folks in their primary childbearing years are not as plentiful as older and younger folks within your district. We also have seen that the birth trend, the number of births in your district has been slightly declining over the years. The trend lines in blue and red suggest that. And your highest birth years were about the 2004 to 2009 period, and it's kind of trailed off since then. That ties with those age pyramids. Also related to that, this chart shows 2 lines. The first line are the number of kindergartners entering in every year from 2009 until this year. And the purple line above it is the number of 12th graders in that year. So the long and the short of it is, except for 1 year, the number of graduating 12th graders has been greater than the number of incoming kindergartners. So that's endemic of a flat enrollment pattern. We talked about the survey that we've done. Steve has been doing this for a while now, every few years. What we found, and this again ties back to that previous data, is that for new single-family housing units, these were Village of Waunakee housing units, about 0.63 kids per unit back in 2005. And as those new families came and as that birth rate went up, we had higher numbers of students per housing unit, over 0.9 kids. It doesn't necessarily sound like a lot. It's a pretty high number in my world. And that number we learned last year has dropped down a little bit now to about 3/4 of a kid per unit. So what this all means in terms of your recent enrollment trends, this is from 2015 to 2018. And the different lines from top to bottom, the top line is elementary school enrollment, which has gone up slightly. So you've had some smaller kindergarten classes, but they have been growing in size. The next line down is high school. High school enrollment has so far been growing pretty substantially. So elementary and high school, about 40 more kids per year in each of those grade groups. The story's a little different at the intermediate and middle school. The intermediate schools, actually the orange line, has seen slightly declining enrollment, and the middle school has been pretty flat over the last few years. That's the past. Let's talk a little bit about the future. As I mentioned earlier, last year we updated enrollment projections extending through the year 2030 based on a lot of this new data. So while we have still significant housing growth in Waunakee, we have the opportunity for greater growth in Bishop's Bay certainly taking hold. And we have not only single family, but some multiple family development occurring in your community. So we last year tried to put that all together for updated enrollment projections. This particular chart shows a few things. This is on the left-hand side was the September 2018 enrollments. That's total enrollment for the 1496 number. And then the numbers beyond that are projected resident enrollment, so they don't include open enrollees in to the extent that they're still coming to the district. The projection is for increasing enrollment at the elementary level. As the current data suggests, it's scheduled to be relatively modest in the near future, but increasing beyond that. The shaded areas, the low line marked by the 1672 number, that's under the ideal capacity of all the elementary schools combined. The 1856 number is the maximum capacity of all the elementary schools combined. So you can see, again, that notion that you'll be in that planning zone by sometime around the year 2025 for elementary schools. At the intermediate school level, again, with the building project, you've taken care of capacity for a number of years. This again suggests that by about 2030, the maximum capacity of that building is projected to be tested a little bit. Middle school enrollment is the most interesting, and in fact, compared to what we thought last year, probably we've overshot the mark in terms of middle school enrollment for at least the next couple of years. What we have here at the middle school is currently a pretty small grade 5th and 6th class sizes that will be in middle school in 2 years in our 2020 period. And so that 656 number for 2020 projected enrollment is likely to be pretty optimistic, and we might even see declining enrollment at the middle school over the next couple of years. After that, we've got that bubble class that will come, so we will see increasing enrollment at the middle school level following 2020. But the trajectory might be a little bit slower than represented here on our projections.
Can I add something to that, Mark?
Yep.
The pink line on this slide represents the portable classroom. So if you go behind the middle school, you'll see we have a portable unit back there that has 2 classrooms in it. So with that being online, that's one of the questions that we will have in front of the board as we plan our next steps, is what's the time frame and longevity of keeping that portable classroom in place? Obviously, if we keep it, it gives us some additional capacity. If there's a point where we move away from it, it moves us closer to that point where we need additional space for our middle schoolers. Once we get past this kind of decreased bubble that's coming through right now.
Thanks for mentioning that, and one other thing that I failed to mention when we were on elementary school is that the purple text at the bottom of the screen, that to achieve the capacity that you're seeing here, that capacity range, additional classrooms would have to be remodeled at Heritage. So this is not what we have to actually put students in right now. This is what could be done if those classrooms were.
That's partially what we showed the board members when we did our tour of Heritage earlier this fall.
One additional thing we talked about at facilities the other night too, with back to the elementaries.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
You can go either spot, but, well, no, it's more the elementaries because we have boundary issues in all these places, because we keep, wherever we have capacity, we keep shoving our kids to certain spots. So then you're creating bushing, you're creating all kinds of other issues by not having kids go into the schools that they're in, the neighborhoods that they're in. So you have boundary issues there. The portable classroom is a reason that time frame extended, because that's anywhere from 40 to 50 students, I believe, with them two classes. So where we were probably on the mark that we'd been doing that earlier, we've been able to delay it, but how long do you do that with that? And then there's also a security issue involved with those, on how do we handle that, which has been what we've been getting grant money and doing some things to shore that up, but by having those there, that's an issue that we have to deal with coming up too. So.
The high school is good through the 2030 time frame, and our projections are pretty much on target with what the growth that has been happening at the high school level. We're not for those temporary classrooms. The middle school and the high school would both just have a one capacity number. We only have the range indicated for the elementary level and middle, or intermediate, I'm sorry. This gets to the so what questions. So we've talked a little bit about the fact that during the 2020s we anticipate needs for your district. We always did back in the 2014 plan. The intermediate school wasn't the end of it. The question now becomes, what happens first and second and third, and what might be done in the interim. So some potential adjustments either in writing or in thinking to the 2014 facilities plan are written on screen. The trends and projections suggest that construction of new elementary and middle school buildings may be deferred perhaps until after 2025. And that might allow the middle school, timing of a new middle school to be linked more closely to when the high school might start to test its own capacity. And then there's a couple of shorter term issues that I'll just read, and then I'm going to turn it over to Randy to elaborate upon. The convergence of building needs, enrollment projections, and debt capacity suggests maybe a smaller scale set of building projects for a 2020 referendum. They could include the remodeling of additional classrooms at Heritage as we start to approach the capacity of the existing classrooms. And that point in time would be the most logical, perhaps, to address potential attendance area or boundary adjustments among the three elementary schools. And then you see a couple question marks as to what might be taken on by a potential referendum. What to do with the middle school, temporary classrooms, security issues. Should additional classrooms be added to replace the temporary classrooms? Those are question marks. And then the district has worked through a variety of potential building maintenance projects on several schools that could be packaged together within a referendum. That's where I lose my expertise very quickly, and I turn it over to you and the administrator.
All right, thanks, Mark. I appreciate all your work in helping us get all those demographic pieces. Mark's done a nice job of really summarizing these last two bullet points, or last two slides. The previous slide, you kind of laid out a time frame for potential elementary and middle level. That's a conversation we had in depth here at the facilities committee meeting. And part of what we discussed there was wanting to really dive into kind of the timing of when we may need those schools. And then is there a sense to have them both come at the same time, or do we stagger them? There's also a piece that really plays into, you can go to the next one, Rebecca, of really what do we need to do with that middle school, particularly that temporary classroom unit. Is that a piece we're going to keep for the next couple of years, or until we get to a point where we are going to build that middle school? I mean, that's really, and how does that precipitate into us then, the trigger to build that school? The piece I don't want to have lost, though, is all of those enrollment projections K4 are hinged upon completing Heritage. When we did the last referendum where we added additional space at Prairie, we did some remodeling at Heritage and we built the intermediate school. We also knew when we passed that there was going to be a point when enrollment grew at Heritage that we needed to do some additional work there to really create a 6+ track school. So that work still needs to be completed. So that is an important piece as we get around that 2020 timeframe. The Heritage piece is really a must-do item for us to hit those capacity numbers. The areas that we are also working on is the building maintenance. We know that we have, as you saw last spring, the 20-year facility maintenance plan. You can see the dollar amounts that are associated with some of the deferred items, and then casting all of those forward over 20 years. We are going to be bringing that as our next iteration that comes back to the Facilities Committee. We're going to be working with Findorf again over the next few months just to update that plan. And then that will come to Facilities and then back to this body. So you can see really now the enrollment piece and then tie that in with the maintenance aspect. Once we have both of those pieces updated, then Steve and I will be sitting down and taking a look at what are some options and pathways for how do we move ahead with a future referendum question, potentially around the 2020 timeframe, that incorporates Heritage, but then also asks the question of how do we structure it from a facility maintenance standpoint, and also what are the options that allow us to either kind of the span of options from doing nothing at the middle school all the way to considering adding the new middle school online at that point. I think we need to kind of bridge all of those pieces and talk through that. Now we want to use the enrollment projections that Marcus has shown, and then also look at what happens as we move through those bubble years. We have some bubble classrooms that are moving through that either spike or valley some of our numbers for a couple years. So that's really the next steps for us. Enrollment projections here tonight gives you a picture of really where those subdivisions are coming and what's happening in our community and what's happening with our capacities in our schools. The second piece, looking at building maintenance. What does that need to look like and how do we need to incorporate a plan for addressing that moving forward? And then finally, kind of the piece with regards to what are the options we have around the middle school. Steve, anything to add that I have particularly missed there? All right. So with that, open it up for any questions for either Mark on the presentation or Steve or I with regards to the last part.
Mark.
It's really more for Steve and you, Randy. I really appreciate the numbers that Mark presented. I think it gives a clear picture of where we might go. My question is, do we also have to factor in the average number of students above our anticipation? It seems like every year we have a certain number that we anticipate having, but then that number increases by, maybe this year I think it was as much as 40. So Mark's numbers don't really take that in. So when we're trying to look into our crystal ball, does that add urgency and a higher filling number than what the projections show?
I would say two things. I think there's two different numbers we're using. One of the things that we use for budget is a very conservative number, so that we make sure we're not putting out too high a number that then we have to backtrack on the budget.
Right.
So we're putting in a very conservative number in the early stages of the budget, and that's where you see that delta of growth. But yeah, certainly we have to be kind of watching kind of where are those projections and how does that play here. That'll be part of what you'll see as Steve and I bring some options forward. We'll want to incorporate that. We're also looking at what's been, we're very fortunate from a taxing standpoint that when we built the intermediate school, really the the new homes and the growth that occurred really absorbed that tax rate increase. So that's a piece we want to look at as well to make sure that we are maximizing some of our opportunities that are happening at a time of growth in our community.
But Randy, when you're looking at your numbers, you know, we're budgeting conservatively.
Right.
But you're not doing this conservatively. You've got more of a realistic, or what you think is the best guess.
I'm doing it as what I think will actually happen.
Right.
You know, and and I qualify that by saying I have not built into my projections the next Great Recession. So if that were to happen, you know, you could add a few years to the projections. But I also am not building into my projections that every year is going to be like the best year of the last, 5, 7 years.
Yeah.
I think in some of the numbers that you showed though, like 3 years out, that number you're projecting to add about 31 students, 2 to 3 years out. I thought I saw that.
Could be. I could certainly bring up some slides to suggest that. I'm sorry, Jack, I don't have them
That's no problem.
down in my head.
But yeah, to your point, Jack, the numbers are actual numbers that we're using our third Friday counts in September. So those are the actual student count we do on that third Friday count. And we're comparing that to what Mark is projecting.
And Mark is pretty close. If you look at some of the numbers, it seems like he's pretty close on the actual versus what he's projecting.
Not bad. I mean, good enough. Our projections are always intended as long-range planning tools. So they don't do the greatest job of predicting the bubbles. That's when you have to kind of dig down, and Steve and Randy have to kind of say, oh, this is a big 4th grade class we have here, or whatever it happen to be right now.
I think one of my biggest concerns over adjusting too far away from the 2014 plan is as you looked at those numbers, you saw the elementary school, the middle school, and the intermediate school all hitting their max at the same time. That means you would have to build all 3 of them simultaneously, practically, or within a 2 or 3 year period of each other. That would be a huge economic hit on us. I mean, Verona's building a high school and an elementary school right now, and they're close to $100 million. That's almost 3 times what we built for the intermediate school. I don't think we can do that, and Verona only did it because they had a financial bubble that is called EPIC, come out of a TIF district in 1 year. We're not going to have that. When I look at that number and I see that middle school with the 2 portable classrooms, and then the concept of building a security entrance and adding classrooms in order to try to delay the middle school, I see spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million, to delay something so we put all 3 schools on top of each other. And then in the end, you didn't need that space at the middle school when it goes to the high school, which isn't near capacity even at that time. So I hope we will, and I've asked Steve to try to take a look at the property tax base and say, can we do with the middle school what we did with the intermediate school? Use the increase in growth to pay for a middle school so we're not spending money to delay it and put all 3 schools on top of each other. So I hope we'll consider that. The numbers may be able to say use 2 portable classrooms and delay the middle school until 2030. But 1, we threw the whole security out the window because those kids are going in and out of those classrooms all day long. No secure entrance at the front is going to do anything about that. And 2, we're putting all of our building in 1 year or within a 2 or 3 year period of each other. I don't think our tax base can handle that. And the bigger thing is, God forbid that referendum failed, because now every single school went over capacity at the same time. That would be horrible. So it's nice to sit there and look that a small referendum will delay things, but I think you're delaying yourself into a huge referendum, which I think is economically worse for us. But again, I think Steve can give us, I think you said that you could probably come up with an estimate as to what we could look at if we did do a referendum, how much the new tax base could eat that referendum up and make it financially feasible to deal with at least one of our 3 problems enough so that all three problems don't happen at the same time.
But realistically, I think what you're looking at, obviously if we do the heritage, that solves some of our elementary. So we're looking at a middle school, which I agree. You know, we definitely have to look at a middle school, and then we're gonna create a campus with the middle school and the high school. And I believe that, you know, being prudent, you should build in some extra capacity. But, you know, when you look at the high school, you know, it's 2030 before we run into, you know, any minor strains. And then we're gonna give that high school campus a facility that'll hold about 300 students, and maybe it's not gonna hold, but no, it's 600, 600 to 700.
Yeah.
So you're, you know, what are you gonna do with all of that extra capacity? And yes, we can put offices and things like that in there, but I think, you know, that's a broader question on how do we, you know, utilize the facilities and be prudent about it.
No, I agree. You have to utilize the middle school. I think there are some programs that can utilize the middle school now. Would you use it at 100%? No. The problem is, though, the middle school is practically at 100% now. What do? You're gonna put an addition on it? Now you're gonna be spending $4, $5, $6, $7 million, and then later on you're gonna build a new middle school, and now you have even more capacity that you're gonna give to a high school that it doesn't need? It just doesn't make sense to me to spend a lot of money on a building that is larger than you need for the high school campus now, and then you do a short-term referendum that spends X amount of money that later on you didn't need. You're gonna have to spend the money eventually. And I think it's important that if our tax base can handle it, do it and do exactly what the luck we had with the intermediate school and keep it at 0. But as you said, the high school maxes out near 2030 also. Great, let's do more. I mean,
Well, I think
that's
if
the
you look
problem,
at the
putting them
number,
all in 1 year.
well, you know, in 2030, max capacity at the high school is 1,600, and what you're projecting is 1,500. So you're about 100 students below capacity in 2030, and then you're going to give the high school a 700 facility that has the capacity for 700 students. And I'm not arguing the sense that we don't need a middle school, but you know, I think it's got to be a broader discussion on what do we do, you know, with that facility, so that we're spending taxpayer money prudently.
And I think coming out of the facilities committee, really what we've laid out for the charge that Steve and I have is once we get through the facilities work at the next facility maintenance project piece, is that we'll work to lay out multiple options. That will include all of what we've talked about here, so you can kind of see kind of what those ramifications look like. And the big question also being, what do you do if you have additional capacity at a building such as the middle school? What are some of the options of what we can do there?
Mike?
I guess I have two overarching comments, and the second kind of piggybacks off of what Dave said. The first, and maybe Mark can speak to this more clearly than I can, but I think a lot of the assumptions we have here about population growth are also assuming that all the communities within the district are going to continue on the same level of growth with the same type of homes being built. So right now, we all know that basically every community in the district treats, for example, affordable housing like the plague. We don't have it being built anywhere. That's predominantly going to produce more children in school because those are starter homes. Those are people living in apartments. Those are people much more likely to be moving into the district. They'd probably have more kids. So we don't have that going in. I think the assumption is that happens every 2 to 4 years, maybe at all. That's spectacularly low. So we are assuming that's not going to happen at all. And then the second point, overall, we're really only discussing building something based upon capacity needs. We're only talking about, do we have enough seats for children? We're not necessarily talking about what those seats look like for the children. The thing that was one of the most memorable experiences for me when my son started in Arboretum in kindergarten last year was we got together and we had, and I see that Sheila's not here, but this is one of the most memorable things I've ever heard her say, is that they created Arboretum to effectively create an open and welcoming environment for children. And if you go into Arboretum, you can clearly see that that's the case. There are curved hallways, big open nested classrooms where the kids like to be. You go from elementary school to the intermediate school, and anyone who's been in that knows how open and inviting the intermediate school is. And then we move on to the middle school. And my experience in the middle school has been that I have been the guardian ad litem for 3 children in the middle school. And I've gone to that middle school and I've interviewed kids, and every single one of them says this place feels like a prison. So I'm concerned about children that are getting to the 7th and 8th grade level, who are going through a lot in their lives and are experiencing the need for an open and, for lack of a better term, enjoyable learning experience. My concern is that when we're putting kids in a trailer, or putting kids in a dark school, or putting kids in a refurbished closet, that's not a great learning environment for them at the time they need it most. So I hope that we keep the overall atmosphere of the learning experience in the forefront of our minds, not merely talking about, do we have enough space for kids?
Absolutely.
Good comment. Any other comments?
So I got a technical question. So on the one chart, as Mark or Steve or Randy, whoever, on the one chart where we're showing that our high school graduation rate is higher than always our income, how does open enrollment play into that? Because that is one of the places that we allow open enrollment, because we have the teachers and staff, and we also have, so how would that compare if we looked at how that compares if we slow that down?
So you wanna go back to that chart for a second?
It's a blue line and an orange line.
Just to bring that up.
Oh.
No, a little further back.
That one.
Yep, no, right up. So one important piece to think about with Mark's numbers is Mark works with resident students. So as you're referring to, we also accept open enrollment students following the school.
Which was how many last year?
So the biggest percentage of students, or number of students we accept, is in 4-year-old kindergarten. So as you know, we've accepted typically up to around 30 students in 4-year-old kindergarten. Once we accept the students, then it is their family's decision as to whether or not they continue in kindergarten. So we do typically see about 20 to 25 of those students continuing with us in kindergarten. So if you added those students to this chart, it would look a little bit differently. But just keep in mind that Mark's focus is on resident students throughout his numbers. But we do have open enrollment students in our district. Right now, across all grade levels, we have 199 students. So it's not significant when spread out across 12 grades, but we do have about 200 students right now attending our district through the open enrollment program.
But you're talking about a variation here of 40 to 50. So in that case, depending on where they fall, which is usually our younger and our older, it can make a difference on how this chart is. That's all. I'm looking at the chart trying to figure out how we're having that many graduate more than are coming in. And if we ever look at most of the numbers, most of the time I see bigger classes on the younger. But
And what I think
just the way you see it.
What I think you also see, Gary, over time is that you have a lower number at kindergarten, then you continue to gradually grab kids.
Right.
So that by the time they get to 12th grade, and that's been a trend line we've had as well.
Right. Just saying, this seemed funky.
Just to understand, I think basically, it seems to me, we quite often end up with more people move in with kids in higher grades than move out with kids in higher grades, right? So.
That would seem to make sense.
Right. It's great to have a high-performing high school. People don't believe it, but they tend to want to get to it.
All right, anything else on this topic? Okay, moving on. Thank you, Mark. Site-based budget requirement report. Steve?
So I'm gonna ask Rebecca just to pull it up for a moment. So last February, when I prepared a strategic planning presentation on resource allocation and budgeting, I talked a little bit about a new federal requirement that school districts all across the country are now required to report financial information at the school level. This is brand new. In Wisconsin and with most states, financial data, while collected locally, was never reported to the state of Wisconsin nor reported to the federal government. So beginning with this fiscal year, every school district across the country is required to submit this information. The main reason for this is the thought that there are equity allocation issues among school districts in the same district and school districts in the same state and region. So Wisconsin has required a budget version of this report to be submitted as well. So the federal government is not requiring a budgeted version of this report, but the state of Wisconsin is. So what you see on the screen in front of you is the report that Wisconsin is requiring, broken down on the far left-hand side by school locations, the enrollment, the third Friday count in September enrollment. One interesting thing about this report is the enrollment for this report means all students in a school, irregardless of whether they're resident students or open enrollment students. So for this report, it's all students in a school. Site level expenditures are those expenditures that can be recorded to a particular school location. A great example would be a first grade teacher, supplies for second grade. Expenses that are not allocated to the site level are listed in the middle column, called district centralized per pupil expenditures. A great example of that would be maintenance costs. We currently do not track maintenance supplies, materials, equipment to the school building level. So maintenance is currently a centralized expenditure. Other centralized expenditures would be the superintendent's office, the business office. Many other offices out in this location are centralized expenditures. So the middle part of this report is taking costs like the business office and allocating it out across all of the school buildings on a per pupil basis, to eventually get to the far right of the report, which is the total per pupil expenditures. The area that I believe that will have the most focus is really to the far left, under the site level per pupil expenditures, under the state and local column. The federal column is going to vary significantly. There are schools that are eligible for Title I funding and there are schools that are not. So it's very difficult to look at the federal column and draw any conclusion, because you can have a wide variation and really even resources being available to a school from the federal government. State and local is really the bulk of our funding, and it really shows you a picture as far as what we are allocating per school site. So a great example, you can see Arboretum Elementary School is at $9,483. Heritage Elementary is at $9,512. That's incredibly close when you think about all the variables that go into this calculation. Experience of staff, widely different utility costs based on the age of the building, a whole variety of factors go in. So in the end, to see a couple of our elementary schools have funding allocated to them at such a close level is a real positive sign.
You do see that Prairie's at 9203. That's only about $40,000 difference from the other two elementary schools. So again, that's incredibly close when you take a look at all the variables. Probably one of the outliers when you take a look at this report that would cause you to think that seems unusual is the significant difference at the intermediate school. It would be surprising, I think, to most people to see that the intermediate school allocation is higher than at the high school level. And I think to take a look at that, you really have to look at the enrollment number of 577 to really see why it is what it is. This year's enrollment at the intermediate school is much lower than we've seen in recent years. And our staffing for the intermediate school does not change significantly whether we have 577 students or 625 students. We have 13 sections that we have had at the intermediate school in both 5th and 6th grade for probably at least 4 to 5 years. And so you're going to see that number change as that enrollment bounces back. So as an example, the 4th grade class is quite large. As the 4th grade moves to 5th grade next year, you are just going to see that 10,445 come down automatically because of the student enrollment. So I don't want you to draw any conclusion by looking at this and saying we must be over allocating funds to the intermediate school. It's more of a function that that school is staffed to have a much higher student population than what's currently there. If you take a look at the middle school and high school, you would see how incredibly close the allocation of resources are between grades 7 through 12. So I think what you're going to find is a lot of schools are going to take a look at this and they're going to find much wider discrepancies than you see here, which are going to cause administrative teams and school boards to want to really take a close look at how funds are being allocated to the building level. In our case, I think this is positive information showing that we have very similar levels of funding being allocated across our various school buildings. At the end of the year, we are required to report actual expenditures to the DPI, which will then be expended, or eventually shared with the federal government. One interesting part about this is just trying to understand how this data is going to be used as we move forward. Tim and I have talked as an example, is this information going to be tied to the school report cards? There's a very real possibility that you could see this information at some point showing up on the school report cards. So there's a variety of different ways this may eventually be used, but because it is brand new, I thought it was important enough just to show you this so you can see what this is looking like. At the end of the year, I will want to show you the final information for each of the schools. And this is something we will want to track on a year in, year out basis to see if we do believe we have any equity issues with funding between our schools that we want to address. But for now, this is the first look at what this data is being reported to the state. Does anybody have any questions?
Nice explanation, Steve, thank you. Next we have the audit, I think you're also.
So I'm going to ask Rebecca just to bring up, to share with you what we've included in the board book for your review. There's 2 documents. The first one is a letter from our audit firm to you as school board members. The second one is the much larger detailed financial statement. Rebecca has moved that in the extra section of the board packet. At a high level, just as a reminder, this is our 2nd year with Wagner CPAs. The school board selected Wagner CPA previously, and which was a change in audit firms for us. So this is their 2nd year of completing this work for the school district. The letter that has been included in your packet for your review, typically what you see from the audit firm is a couple of things. The most important thing is to look for what's called a significant finding. If there's a significant finding identified in your audit, that is reportable to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. And oftentimes that means there's going to be some financial penalty that goes along with it. An example of what might be what might be reported would be an error in the transportation claim for the school district, an error in special education accounting, things that the auditor sees that they want to note to the state of Wisconsin to take a closer look at what it is that we're doing because we might have misreported information. So the important thing as a board member is to look for that. It's called a significant audit finding. So there are no significant audit findings in this letter for you to review tonight. The second thing is that the audit firm always goes through and provides information to the school board on suggestions to strengthen internal controls or improvements. If you remember last year, the auditors had a number of suggestions for us. This year they have two. The two are identified on the screen. Earlier in the meeting, you heard the topic of gift cards come up. That is one of the two items that the auditors noted during their testing. So what you can see, where their first statement is during their testing of disbursements from the Student Activity Fund. So I'm just going to stop there for a minute. So our school board policy allows the purchase of gift cards from only two sources of funds in the district. One is student activity funds. So tonight you had a student club here, pay it forward. So our policy allows student clubs to take the money that they raise to purchase gift cards. And number two is our Fund 21, our gift fund. And so as an example as to how that is used is our social workers do seek gifts for the families that they work with and do turn around and provide gift cards to families. Good examples could be gas cards, food cards, etc. So as our auditors were reviewing and doing their testing, they did note that our policy allows gift cards to be purchased, and as you can see in their note, gift cards make it difficult to trace what the funds were actually spent on. That's absolutely true. So they are calling it to your attention. As a board, you are not required to change your policy. So this is just a notice from the auditors that they think there's an opportunity to strengthen controls in this area. An example of something that you could consider doing as a board is you could amend your policy to have a maximum gift card value of blank. Right now, there isn't a maximum gift card value in our policy. But if you wanted to look for an opportunity to strengthen control, that is something that could be done. Another suggestion, Jack, you had brought that up, there could be a requirement that someone sign off that they received it. That could be something that we could look at. But as of right now, that is one of the two items that was identified. The second one is regarding capital expenditures. And what the second bullet point means is really the very large items. So these are individual items that are $5,000 or more and above. A good example would be the Warrior scoreboard at the stadium that was purchased. What the auditors are suggesting is that we recommend a procedure for tracking capital expenditures that exceed the $5,000 threshold in our process. So right now, that is done by me, by going through and looking at the list of assets and removing the ones that I know have been sold. Or in the example of Warrior Stadium, we remove the old scoreboard and we add the new scoreboard. We do not hire a third party to do that. Some school districts do hire a third party to do that for them. It is something that is currently handled in the business office. The auditors are just suggesting that we take a look at what are some of the practices that are out there for tracking the large expenditure items so that they are reported on the district-wide financial statements. Keep in mind, this is not referencing anything to do with computers, iPads, Chromebooks. This truly is only for the large assets in the district. The high school building, the concession stands on the field, the scoreboard that is worth way more than $5,000.
Or lights on a field.
Lights on a field, exactly. So these are for the very large items that we currently have in place on our fixed asset schedule.
Excuse me, Steve,
Yep.
what are they wanting you to do? Or what are they suggesting so that if you sell these, they come off the balance sheet?
So
for
we,
financials?
that's a good question. So I think what they are looking at us, what they're recommending in general is researching the various options that exist for keeping that list accurate and for us to consider which option do we think is the one that we should consider. It could be continuing what we're currently doing. It could be bringing in a third-party firm. It could be looking at a software program. There's a wide variety of options that could be looked at. They're just noting that this is an area that they are suggesting that we evaluate what the options are.
So what does that process look like for us? Will that go through budget or policy to see if, to explore those options then?
So last year, after we received the internal control recommendations from the audit firm, we brought this to the budget committee meeting of the school board. We spent time looking at each of them. Some of the recommendations from last year's audit have come back over the last year in policy revisions. Some of them have not. It just depends on what the particular issue was that was identified. At this point, our recommendation is that the budget committee meet in January. We review these two topics and start having a discussion about how we would like to move forward with the two items that have been identified.
It seems more like a procedure than a policy.
The first one is a policy, the second one is a procedure. Yep.
Forgive me for stepping backwards, but I seem to remember from last year's audit too, one of the other things they commented on was an outside firm we were using to do some kind of actuarial table
Yes.
or something.
Yep.
Did we change that?
Yeah, so what Julie's referring to is the audit report last year identified difficulties in working with the firm that we hire for post-employment benefits, our Fund
That was it.
73. After discussing it, it is only required to update that report every 2 years. And so working this through with our audit firm, we were able to update the information for this financial statement without any additional cost. But we will be needing to update the actuarial firm this fiscal year.
Okay.
And the auditors did identify a concern. Actually, we've now learned that the firm that we were working with has pulled out of the business of doing actuarial studies, so continuing with them isn't even an option at this
Okay.
point. So we will be needing to select someone new to do that for us.
Anything else on the audit report? Perfect, thank you, Steve.
Do you need approval of the audit at all?
It's up to the board whether you want to choose to do that or not. It's not something I need, but
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nice job, thank you. Announcements and correspondence?
Yeah, the only correspondence, just trying to get to it, my computer, we had from the Forensics Association. This is really with regards to Rick Braun and our Waunakee play. Just having some commendation and then a letter that was accompanied with that. So I just wanted to share that with you. So congratulations to all of those who are again involved with that program. All I have for announcements this evening.
Thank you. Moving on to committee reports, starting with facility committee.
The facility committee, we talked about what was presented earlier with referendum discussion and enrollment and so forth. But the bigger project is the lights on the softball diamond. There was a presentation given to the committee.
Just a high-level overview. I think all of you know Tammy Rademacher, who teaches at the high school, is also our varsity softball coach. She is bringing forth a proposal that went through facilities. It is being recommended from the committee to the board for consideration. She has a little bit of a timeline in that she'd like to apply for a grant to start raising funds for putting lights on the field. So as she spent about an hour with us at the committee level, she has some of her highlighted slides that she will address tonight. And I think the question in front of the board tonight is really picking up on the recommendation from the facilities committee, which would be to consideration of allowing Tammy to move ahead with that grant. Also to move ahead with other fundraising efforts. And then as those fundraising efforts move forward, the consideration of the board contributing similarly to how they did with the baseball project, which is right around $20,000 when we did that. So Tammy, thanks for being here and being patient.
Actually, he summarized real nicely what I have here for you, so I'll try to keep it short and sweet. As you mentioned, I had a chance last week to meet with the facilities committee and really go through a very long presentation. This is reduced for you to a couple slides. Some things I just want to highlight here with you, and then if you have questions, that's what I'd really like to be able to answer for you. So as Randy said, we want to get lights for one of the softball fields. We are looking at needing to put lights on the JV field because of the issues with the airport. And so the nice thing is that both of our fields are actually, they are identical in terms of the fields themselves. Some of the amenities around the fields with the press box and whatnot are a little bit different, but the field, it's the exact same size and so on. And so the overview of the funding, what we're looking at, approximately $170,000 that we'd need to look at raising. We've had some estimates come in. I've worked with Joe Bellamo already to talk with the village with some of the things. I've met with some of our reps from Musco Lighting already at this point, and so their estimate has come in. You can see the numbers there for the Musco, the transformer, some landscaping things. Hopefully there'd be some potential to get some of that work donated. An electrical estimate, kind of a wide range there right now too, just because of some of the fine tuning that would need to occur yet as this project hopefully would move forward. The low end estimate there, you can see adding up the low end of the numbers there and not including a landscape. The high end, that number came from adding up all of the high end and including landscaping in there. So that's an overview of what we're looking at for funding required. At this point, some of the sources, so really what I'm hoping is that the full board would, as Randy said, support us moving forward to try to get this Baseball Tomorrow grant. I'm hoping to get 50% of what we need from that grant. Some other things, including our softball booster club, our Waunakee area softball association, that would be the youth softball association in this community. Part of this too then is a class community fundraising campaign. The goal there would be to raise $40,000. As Randy mentioned, baseball, and they're lighting up the lights project, received some school district funds, and so we would hope that we'd be able to get some, an equal amount there. Maybe the village with some things. There is a Village of Waunakee tourism grant. I don't know how many people know that. Baseball got it, so that's something that I plan on applying for as well. It's $2,000. You can see the deadline with that. The Endress Manufacturing Foundation grant, hoping to apply for $5,000 from them. You can see the deadline there. And so really some of the specifics here, some of the other things too, and for example, that class community fund, I have it in draft form ready to hopefully forward on to Steve and Randy if you guys all do agree that we should be allowed to move forward with this. So you can see single, double, triple, home run, the fundraising levels. Really I base this off of what baseball did. Any donations at the 2,000 or above would get a pennant from the light poles for 4 years, and that's very similar to baseball. Baseball actually has a fee structure, maybe you're familiar with, maybe not. Closer to the road, they pay a little bit more versus further away. So maybe I didn't know that, I found that out in my research. Ours, we don't have that prime real estate necessarily, so it'd be no matter where you are, the $2,000 or above would get that pennant. I'd work with Randy in baseball to do it the right way. As he shared with me, they discovered what you need to do to make sure you do that the right way with the pennants themselves. The lighting fee, actually Thursday this week, I'm meeting our Waunakee Area Softball Association has a meeting. Was supposed to be before, but a to-be-determined lighting fee we plan on putting towards the summer, the youth softball. So they pay a fee. Actually, it's one of the lower fees in town for a youth sport in the summer. So we'd be looking at adding maybe a $20 fee or something. So nothing significant. And actually even I would suggest that we even cap it per family, because we do have some families with 3 girls, and so we maybe cap it at $50 even or something per family. It's part of playing. It's a fee because they will be utilizing these and benefiting tremendously from having the lights. And then obviously people can donate above and beyond as their means maybe allow and as they see fit. This is what it would look like. That's just beautiful looking at that. It's been a goal of mine for some time to get lights on one of the softball fields, and really we've reached a point where we are the only outside sport that doesn't have lights available to play. Or practice, for that matter, out of all of the Waunakee outdoor sports. So it's time. That grant, when you do look at the criteria for it, and I think that maybe was included with some of your stuff, we can check off every single thing. And so we'd be silly not to try to apply for it. I think that was what I really had for you. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Just so I can answer if asked this question, why the JV versus the varsity?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest reason is probably the airport. Would I rather have it on the varsity? Yeah, probably. And if we did that, we have a better infrastructure in place there already with our press box and so on. But when you look at, Joe Belmo showed me the plan, when you look at the plans with the runway for the airport, it goes out in a cone where you can't be, have large structures there. It's just not feasible to.
There's a few of those areas outside the airport, as Tammy said, that kind of cone out, and they have prohibitions on what you can actually put there. So we can put some things that are temporary. You can have things like, you heard the Garden of Dreams is in there, you've got the field is actually there, but nothing that's permanent. When we used to have like football practice down in the bowl down in there, they had a portable goalpost, not a permanent goalpost. That was for that reason.
So, learning from what we learned earlier, what has your parent engagement been like? And so, is there parent support? Is this something parents have been asking you for?
Primarily, even more so with the youth, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you go to a softball game in the spring, quite often, as the varsity and JV are leaving their fields, youth come on, and they want to practice as soon as we're done.
Okay.
And so would they benefit from having lights on the field? Yeah, they can practice beyond. So I think, especially with the youth coming up, there's definitely a need for it with the number of teams that we have and just how much we'd be able to also continue to utilize the space.
Cammie's also looked at the village and being able to utilize some of those fields, and just with other activities that are scheduled through the village, they're just not available and conducive to what she's looking.
Yeah, you could say, well, Centennial, but Centennial, a couple issues there. We couldn't play a high school game there, a varsity game legally. It's against the rules at this point now, because there's not an offense in the 185 to 215, I believe, feet that you have to have for a regulation high school varsity game. So that's not an option, and just over the years, the town, it's grown with their use, and so getting Centennial, even in the summer, is become impossible, really.
One of the things that came up at the facility committee though is they talked about the baseball field and how many times those lights go on. And it was like 4 times in during the season, and maybe
twice Spencer said
half dozen times throughout the summer. So, obviously it's something we should look at, but utilization is probably.
And I would argue that softball would use it significantly more than that, I know.
If they do, that's great.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
well, if you're gonna
but,
spend that much money, you hopefully are
you know,
using it, right?
If you use it, it's great.
Yeah.
In theory, I'm not at all opposed to going forward with the fundraising. My concern is what happens if the fundraising stalls. Is it, would it be a 2-year endeavor then to get the money?
Potentially, yes, yeah. I mean, I have a really aggressive schedule that I'm looking at, but realistically, we'll see. I mean, one of the issues too, one of the things why I'm investigating the grant so heavily is because of the fundraising fatigue in our town. You know, so can we get half of it covered, and then, okay, community, let's see this other half to help our girls. I mean, it's providing an equal opportunity that everyone else has, and we're the only ones who don't.
Thank you.
Tammy laid out for the committee, if you don't get the grant, what's my next steps, and it prolongs the time frame for it.
I think the baseball took like 4 or 5 years to get to where they were.
By the time they actually got organized, it was probably over a year they were spent working on it. I don't recall exactly what their timeline was. You might know, Tammy, but it was.
Yeah, I mean, well, they had some of the pavers, and they had a bigger campaign for some different things too.
All right, so,
Make
we
that-
have a motion to move this forward?
So we're moving it forward to the fundraising,
To-
but not
so she
for
can
committing
apply
to
for the
the
grant.
grant.
Apply for the grant.
So she can start the
So-
grant work and continue with the fundraising.
Right.
I'd like to make Class Community go live as soon as we're able to.
What this gives her parameters to do is to start planning for it. But before anything ever happens, there has to be all of that process come back before things are chosen, before work is done. That all comes back through here in facilities.
And will we approve the fundraising endeavor?
Second.
Any other discussion or questions for Tammy?
You mentioned shooting for the grant being about half. Why only half?
Because that's basically what they prefer, that their grants, the applications to their program, they'd like to see matching funds as much as possible. And when you look at their site, that's definitely preferred. Sure, I'd like to ask for more, but they don't wanna, get the grant denied either.
Thanks for all your work, Tammy.
Yeah,
Yep,
thank you.
thank you, Tammy.
Any other questions for Tammy? or-
Just a general comment. When we looked at this, just like we did with the football field or baseball lights, especially when you're doing something that helps the whole community, and we're only having to put a portion in because they're doing the major backbone of it, I feel it's pretty easy to support stuff like that when ours is community money too, so.
And this is a 25-year warranty on the lights.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
do anything with them. You know, they poles every once in a while, right?
I don't even know if we do that.
We, 25 years, we will not touch those lights. Musco will come out and do everything for us. They'll all be networked, so they'll contact Mike Darwin and say, we will be out there Tuesday to replace this lamp. Because they can tell from their computers, their networks, what's pulling too much power, what's getting drawn down.
So we'll pay utilities longer term, obviously.
But
Yeah,
these are all LED.
LED
Oh,
is,
yeah.
you're gonna see an 85% reduction in your utility cost with the LED lights compared to
Versus
the
the other.
HIDs that we have at baseball and soccer.
Do we have any issues at all with nearby neighbors and zoning?
Lights
Neighbors
and
not
all
wanting
that.
lights. I mean, obviously this is an issue like at Edgewood with people saying, not in my backyard or anything. Is that gonna be a problem at all?
We haven't recently. I don't know if you've had any.
No,
we-
and honestly, if
Yeah.
that's what it'll look like. So, and if you know where that JV field is, the middle school is, the middle school is beyond that center field light,
Yeah.
and then it's parking lot. Like where I'm like where you guys are sitting is parking lot.
Yeah.
If you go by there too, soccer's right next to that, that's actually more towards the road than that would be in the football stadium right
Yeah.
next to it.
The new lights for the stadium have very little light bleed.
Yeah,
So
they're
what used to
completely
they're
shielded. 150 feet out from where those poles are, you'll have 0% of that bleed light
Wow.
coming through. So actually, like Gary had said, our soccer lights actually bleed out more into the neighborhood than those lights will. So yeah, it's.
Yeah, if you've
Yeah,
gone
that adds a
there,
little bit of edge.
It's fine, if you get a chance to see the.
Still,
it doesn't mean that issue won't come, but it
Yeah.
certainly, this is reduced. When you go to where our old lights were, like on Warrior Stadium, and they would illuminate behind the visitors
Yeah.
area, now that gets very dark very fast, right behind those areas.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, thank
for
you
all
all.
your work.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Tammy.
Co-curricular committee meeting.
We have some club requests and activities requests. I'm gonna ask Brian and Marcy to come forward. In your packet, what you will see are number of requests. We have the middle school dance team, middle school cheer, bowling, insight to science, engineering, and medical professions, ukulele choir, and sheep's head club. Just a kind of a reminder of kind of where we are with clubs and orgs as they come forward. We have to show that there is an interest, so you'll see that in your packet, an advisor, and there's always a 3-year probationary period with regards to making sure that the club is successful and is launched before there's any eligibility for pay. A few of these do not require and are not requesting pay in the future. They're just being really offered as opportunities for kids to get involved with some things that they enjoy at school. So why don't we start off with middle school, and I think really what the recommendations coming out of the committee were to move all of them forward. There was 2 items with the dance and the cheer piece particularly, that they should work and be in concert with the booster clubs at the high school, so we're not creating middle school booster situations. And also, going off of your words, Mark, not having specifically the middle school students responsible for all the fundraising to kind of launch a feeder program to the high school. Is that accurate? So, I guess what I can do is open it up for any questions, particularly around any of those, and then we can be a little bit more expeditious in our conversation. Any questions about any of the clubs or orgs and how they're organized? Yes.
Oh,
Julie?
this gets brought up all the time, so of course, we want to provide increased opportunities for engagements with the students. But at what point does the list get so long, and are we trimming anything back? We talk about this all the time.
When the students stop showing up for the club. I mean, if they show up for the clubs and you got 20, 30 students there, why won't you?
I guess I'm a bit concerned about what our process is to have that then taken off the salaried payroll or whatever.
But I think you do monitor that.
We do.
Yeah.
I think the best response I can give there in this case, it wouldn't be relevant because all of these are non-fee or non-salary.
They're not
positions.
asking for pay.
They're not asking for it. In terms of that, probably the best example I think we talked about at the co-curricular committee meeting was mock trial was very active for a while, then it went defunct. That simply came off the rolls. There was no salary paid for that. A few years ago, when we were going to make that become an active organization again, we brought that back through the process at that point in time, and now it's running again. So a lot of times what will happen, I mean, one of the things that we look at in terms of the process is having a good diversity of student age ranges in there from freshmen to seniors. Does that mean that it might wither or not wither away? It may, and we have examples of that, and in that case, it's dormant, and we don't keep those as active in our co-curricular, in our student parent handbook, and they wouldn't have a seat at the co-curricular fair in the fall. But I mean, the co-curricular fair has gone from 29 organizations to 60-some last year, which I think is awesome. We talk about connections and getting students engaged, and for some students, they find their engagement through manga and anime, or what sheephead club or whatever the case may be.
I think for our committee, one of the compelling things was how wide the popularity and the interest was in each of these groups. And it wasn't just one grade level, it was across multiple grade levels. And, next year, people may not want to be competing in bowling, and so it may lose the steam, but as of right now, we felt as a committee, the interest is there. The interest will determine how long these these clubs survive, but as long as they want to, why not?
And in this case, again, the interest without really any cost.
Exactly, exactly. So,
Question on the dance team and the cheer team, are those actually clubs or are those teams that we're creating?
Those would be teams that you're creating at that level.
Yeah, those would
Okay.
be teams similar to our other middle school sports offerings in terms of how they'd be applied in the middle school handbook. They'd be Fund 80 programs. That way, when and if we ever do move them into a budgeted section, right now they're not requesting any dollars, but it would be available for middle school students, 7th, 8th graders, plus the St. John students, similar to how football or volleyball or basketball is available.
one of the things we did suggest for the dance, I don't know if you're gonna pursue it, is that it might be open to the kids as of the second semester as a participation in a, help me out.
It might do a couple halftime
Halftime
performances.
performances, not in a competitive form, but so
Right.
at least the kids who wanted to do it this year have an option to
Right.
participate.
But the whole goal is to get these into a competitive team?
As of next year,
And
correct.
are they- And are they gonna, where are they competing? Is this gonna be around the state, around the nation?
The dance team would be competing in two events. They'd be when and if they're approved. And they would be traveling with the high school team, so there won't be any additional transportation costs. But they would ultimately have a couple performances where they would be in a competition. But they would be doing halftime performances similar to our dance team, where they do some game time, hype type stuff, and then also have their own competitions. The middle school cheer program would just be a football cheer program like the high school, and they would just be doing the middle school 7th and 8th grade home games. They would never travel, because 1 week 7th grade's home, the following week the 8th grade team's home. They flip-flop, so they would just be doing the home middle school football games.
Marcy, can you just add your perspective from the middle school of adding those and kind of where you see them fitting and why you're supportive of them?
I am supportive of them because it's something else for my kids to be involved in. I have kids who want to be involved in things, but they're not athletically inclined. And I have very few clubs for students who have that interest to get involved in something like this. And when I look at the amount of documentation that Erin has, it shows interest. Even kids who couldn't come to the meeting, their parents emailed them, they emailed about their interest. It's just one more thing for my kids to get involved in a positive way.
Other questions?
Motion to approve the list.
Second.
A through F.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
My only question is not necessarily about the projects themselves, but more about what's included in our packet in terms of all of the people who would sign up with contact information and phone numbers and emails for children. Are those supposed to be in our packets? I just have confidentiality concerns all the time, so.
I'll look at what was, is there one of those that had that in their mic?
They were for.
There was
most
one of
them,
them
like,
that had the emails.
And the bowling club had about 45 kids in there.
All right. We'll look at that for the fifth.
Big email contact.
I tried.
Just to see if they were valid.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Just saying.
Thank you.
The point of interest tomorrow is if you do want to take part in the sheephead exhibition, there would be sheephead exhibition.
An
3:35.
exhibition?
On that list?
Excuse me?
Was your name on that list?
I didn't feel appropriate, but I have made an appearance during contact time exhibitions
Do
occasionally.
they play Leasters?
In craft, yes.
There's a whole gamut of talent and ability in the
Wow.
club, so you can.
You got a blitz chloride.
3:30 to 5 in the Commons tomorrow.
It's above my level.
We have a motion, we need a vote,
Yes, yeah, we do.
Let's
All in
vote. Let's keep
favor?
this thing.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to curriculum committee. Get you out of here pretty soon.
I'll let Tim take it over. The list is quite lengthy, but it's a pretty exciting list.
You got 5 minutes or
Lengthy,
10.
but it is exciting, so, just in terms of non-U courses, we did do a review of the new courses that were coming forward. We'll be getting to that in a moment. We had some discussion around our human growth and development curriculum. And we also discussed some of the pending updates that Michelle referenced earlier around the 7th grade CTE exploratory. But a very significant piece of what has been on the curriculum committee's agenda for the last 2 months have been our new course proposals. And yes, there are quite a few in there, but I think if you look at them one by one, you see they meet specific purposes, some of which we've been discussing around this table for a while, and some as departments have looked at their programs and providing more opportunities for students, particularly in the later high school years, bringing forward new ideas to meet those. So just kind of, going through the list here, if you look at the intermediate French and the intermediate Spanish, the concept there is currently once students go above French and Spanish 3 in our system, they're really on a track to take those upper level CAP courses that are aligned with UW Oshkosh. And those are really good courses, and they're a great fit for a lot of our students. But for students who really aren't interested in those, either the post-secondary credits or some of the more former grammatical pieces there, they may want something that's more communication focused only. That's what those courses are for. You'll see a variety of CTE courses, the welding, the metal fabrication, the baking and pastry, the construction. Again, those are all related to providing opportunities for our kids to lead into the workforce, although again, there are certainly personal aspects to courses like baking and pastry, welding, and actually even construction. If we look at the lifeguarding and lifetime activities, those are, I think, very welcome proposals brought forward by our physical education team to kind of update the offerings there and try to make them more relevant for kids. The Intro to Stats and the Intro to Discrete Math are designed to give students additional options, particularly at the senior level, between kind of our pre-calculus calculus track on the one hand and the Madison College aligned senior algebra course on the other. The last one I kind of want to call attention to is the psychology of sport. And you may know that Rick Breinig and Randy Jenajon teach our Intro to Psychology or AP Psychology courses at the high school. One thing they do is survey students at the end of the year on a variety of topics. And one of the topics they've surveyed students on over the years is, based on what you've learned in our courses this year, what do you wish was your next step in this area? And in the last few years, they've had a lot of feedback from students around the psychology of sports, and in particular, it's kind of cut off here, the psychology of performance. Whether it's workplace performance, performance in athletics, and also managing stress in a productive way so it doesn't lead into anxiety. And they had a lot of student interest in that, and that's why they brought this proposal forward. All of these have been reviewed within the departments, high school leadership team, system-wide, administratively. In terms of materials costs, we were very fortunate last year. If you remember, I think it was June, we had the NDRIS grant come in to support some of the updates that are happening in welding. So really from an equipment and tech standpoint, even though there are a lot of courses here, it's a fairly light impact. Now, there are some of this, from a staffing perspective, will be simply reassortment among electives at the high school. We do expect with these courses, there'll be some impact on career and technical education staffing. On the other hand, there'll be some offsetting staffing freed up with the redesign of the 7th grade exploratory course. So I think in the end, we'll probably be looking at some additional science staffing and business education staffing. Not too much, and we won't know the exact amount until we actually get through course requests from kids in the late winter. But we'll have to to monitor that through our budget development process, and it's a regular item on our 7-12 principals agenda. That's the kind of the high level. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer any you have. Gary?
So, you know, I'm listening to you. How do you staff them, and how do you,
Develop them.
no, program them all in, or get them all organized so that you have the right people in the right place? If we have classes that don't get enough kids for it, is there a threshold where we say we're not having that class? And in the case of some of these, if we don't get enough, is there a time we're not having them, or what, do they just go away, or is it like our club stuff that goes away, and then it's still there though, and we do it whatever, or?
Yeah, we have classes. Gary,
Scheduling is my.
Yeah, you've got classes that just don't run if you don't have a high enough number. We're building up our construction trades piece, but some of those haven't run for a couple of years just based on numbers. So certainly, I mean, it's all part of that. So you're putting those pieces out there. Some of these are being entered in because there's a need for them. Because now they're at a place where we have kids who have an interest in this, or we have kids who are at a level that now they need something that's a next step for us.
Resources providing, there will be some that we will stick with harder as the numbers go lower. If there's a course that is necessary for a student's multi-course sequence, again, resources being available, we would probably stick with that longer than we might stick with, say, a psychology of sports performance, where we feel, you know, a kid could substitute into another elective, good course, but it's not critical to a multi-year sequence, or like a concentration in construction trades. So some of these CTE ones, we would follow into lower numbers just for maintenance, but as Randy said, at some point, you wouldn't offer it.
And then also with some of these, are they helping us in that, hopefully getting options that we're not having to pay for college classes for people that are going and doing that?
So, of the ones on here, none of these would really be, most of them, not really. Now, one thing that I would say is some of these career and technical education courses, the metal fabrication and the welding in particular, are ones that will be dual credit with Madison College. So students complete those, they perform successfully, they'll get at least advanced standard. They're actually Madison College courses that Rob Franz will be bringing into our high school. We haven't really lost any students out to take a course like Foundations of Healthcare, for example, or baking and pastry, but, you know, in theory, maybe. But I'd say really the welding and the metal fabrication.
Well, and the construction, you're looking at potential apprenticeships coming out of that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
Good stuff.
But speaking of construction, that's where my concern is.
Mm-hmm.
Our apprenticeship committee in the electrical trade here in Madison oversees 60-some different contractors. And 70 apprentices enter every single year. And almost every single year, we have contractors we take the apprentices away from. Because those contractors basically use them as low-paid labor and just have them haul material around for the journeyman all day long. And we say, that's not a training program. I notice in here that it doesn't say who the contractors are. That's to be determined. I'm concerned, what sort of oversight are we gonna have to be able to do to a student who signs up for a high school course and is doing it 2 hours a day? And by the way, you figure it out 2 months into the program that really all they've done is haul bricks for a contractor.
Good point.
What are you gonna do?
So part of the guarantee with this, and part of the reason why there will be a stamping impact in the CTE, is that our man, you know, will be on site along with students. So they won't be going off campus.
So the 14 students are all going to the same contractor?
Yes.
I had a question on this, but supposedly that's how it's done.
I can't think of a single electrical contractor in Madison who has 14 apprentices.
So they wouldn't all be electrical.
Well, no, I get that, but that's almost a bigger concern, because now you're.
How do you keep them all productively
How do
busy?
What are they
While
gonna
you're
be
teaching
having them do
Yeah.
in what trade that's gonna have 14 totally unskilled people on a construction site, who are they working for? What are they doing?
So typically, these are residential home projects, these are not commercial. Typically, they would be in plants. As I understand it, you work with your builder or builders, try to have them geographically in one area, so Matt, or in Cottle Mark's case, their instructor is with the kids a fair amount of time to kind of oversee what kind of experiences they're getting. They might not all be on one house, they might be on 2 or 4 houses, but they would all be in the same general area, yes.
And then they rotate through the trades, is my understanding, so that they get an experience in all of them as those pieces come forward. So that's part of the coordination that would go into kind of delivering that program.
The way to think about this is the goal is to kind of achieve what you would get with a kind of build your house model without the district having to take on the
Build a
commitment
house.
of
Right.
all of the initial investment. Now, the offset, and you could say it's actually an added benefit, is you're working with a business partner or business partner center.
So does the company taking these kids on, is there some sort of an agreement that they enter into so that the experience is worthwhile? I mean, that was the one
Yes.
thing I had in the back of my mind, because I was one of those, just, you did whatever you could, you know, but you basically were cleaning up sites, you're carrying stuff and that sort of thing. So as long as, if they're agreeing to providing the opportunities that the course says, I think, so is there an agreement from them?
Yeah, I mean, Walk has an agreement with their partners. We
Okay.
don't have our final partnership set up yet. I'm thinking, given the uniqueness of this, probably an appropriate thing would be when we get to that point. Those agreements aren't something that, at least in Walk, have been board level approvals.
No.
But I think it might make a lot of sense to bring Matt in at that stage and kind of walk you as and provide you an update on where the kids will be.
Okay.
So I can't tell you this will be a February thing, but when we have that, we can bring
Does
it.
this fall under the state youth apprenticeship plan, or not?
So this is not, because it might be, this would be an employment placement, but if you think about the state youth apprenticeship programs, you're trying to hit certain hourly targets. And even though this is a pretty intensive experience, it probably comes short of the annual hourly target for a youth apprenticeship.
This is kind of a capstone project for construction.
So they're not paid by that contractor,
No,
correct?
no.
The benefit we get is we get to get the kids on a job site with the experiences from the contractors. The benefit, the other piece we get is we don't have the liability of buying the lot, buying the house, selling the house, which other districts have been into. So this is a model trying to kind of work through that. I mean, many of the school districts that have that other model lost their program when the housing recession came through. So this is kind of a way to try to work with some contractors that we saw working in other communities to develop a capstone project for our construction trades kids where they could get into a house without the liability that we hold of having to own that house and then try to sell it to flip it.
I'm not entirely aware of the laws surrounding child labor, but if they're not getting paid, is there a specific workaround in the law that prevents them from violating Department of Workforce Development and federal labor laws? Because this sounds like 28 hours of free unskilled labor per day for the contractor. And I want to make sure there is some exemption so that we're not co-opting in labor law violations.
So if this was a case where the instructor's not going on, I mean, for us, this is a course. So a way to think of this is a course where we're partnering with a business partner to bring it in. This would go back several years, but if you can think about some of the work that Sandra Meinholz used to do with, what was Larry's last name? Yes, Larry Hooker. Not on quite the same scale, but it was similar. We wanted to provide an applied capstone experience for our Marketing 2 kids. As part of that, they worked with a business partner. They would be on the job site when the class was going on, because of the numbers, they might not be getting the type of, full-time you'd see in a youth apprenticeship piece.
So are we basically saying they're not working, and that's how we get around it?
Well, or they're making an acknowledgement up front that what they're gaining is worth more than money. The education and the training that they're gaining is worth more than money. So that's the agreement, is
When
that.
you've got a cooperative work, a youth apprenticeship program, they are off-site without the teacher's supervision. They have a periodic check-in with Michelle as a school career coordinator, or another supervising teacher, but it's not an actual course with our instructor there. I mean, I realize this may seem like a subtle distinction, but, under the law, it's a distinction that matters.
No, and that's why I asked it, piggybacking on what Dave said, because he asked about it being a youth apprenticeship, and I know there's an exemption for apprenticeships.
Good
And
point.
since it's not that, I was concerned there isn't one for this.
We can clarify all that for us.
I just look at this as a lot less devious as it's sounding here. It's good for anybody to go out, and if they think they're interested in electrical or brickwork or whatever, the first part they're gonna get is the cleanup and all that, because
Yep.
that's where anybody starts in any job. The second part though is they're gonna find out if they like the cold or don't like the cold, or like the inside, or like the work. And hopefully they get a little feel for that, and then they know where they're going. You don't wanna channel them that they're definitely doing one thing or the other, but it's nice for them to get some experience with something. How many people do we all know that thought they were gonna like this, and then they finally go through all the school and go to it, and that's not their gig? So anything that gives them that, and especially in the trades, when we are so geared towards only educational stuff or going to college stuff all the time, I see this as a good thing either way, as long as it's managed within the curriculum guidelines, which I'm sure Oshkosh has, and I'm sure we're following up. So I see this as a good thing. I don't see this as, there's employers out there looking for people, you know this, all over the place. And
I'm
I
just
see, and
concerned
they're,
about the employers
you're
who
seeing that with the
abuse.
innovation center, so how many are wanting to be involved with that, because hopefully they get some people out of it. So I see it as a good thing, so,
Mark.
good.
It sounds like Tim understands our concerns. To me, one of the shortcomings we've had for as long as I can remember is there's a end stop as to where these construction kids can go, because we couldn't, as a district, provide this kind of construction opportunity. I see this as a potential win-win. Unless we're willing to go forward with it, we're not gonna know if it's gonna work. And I've heard enough tonight to feel that the safeguards are there for our kids. It could be a real plus for the businesses as well, so it sounds exciting to me.
I make the motion to approve.
The whole list. Motion for the whole list?
Second.
Second, any other discussion on any part of the list? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And we will bring Matt in when we get a little further along on the actual partnership agreements to give you more in-depth on this, including where the kids would be and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We are down to the consent agenda. We can take it all as one big chunk. We can pull anything out that you might want more discussion on.
Just to be internally consistent, I guess it's my turn. I would ask that the out-of-state trips be taken out. I know we're on relatively efficiently.
So specifically, you're going to take out soccer and the orchestra trip?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Motion to approve all of the consent agenda other than 2A and B.
Second.
Any discussion other than those two that have been pulled out? All in favor of that part of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so now we need a motion for the soccer and then I think or the soccer and the orchestra trip, and then we can discuss that.
I move we approve both the soccer and the orchestra trip.
Second.
Now, discussion on those two.
So the only reason I asked that those be brought out is I just want to be consistent. I know we're going to be talking about perhaps looking at the overall policy so that we're dealing with those issues in the future. I just like being consistent in the overall ethic of what we're going for. So that's where I stand. I know this is going to pass. That's the only reason I asked to bring it out. But that's all.
I guess when you look at soccer, you know, I know this is a great tournament and so forth, but, you know, I think there's plenty of sport competition within the state of Wisconsin.
Mark?
I would like to point out current policy says we will approve of these opportunities as long as the state is within, you know, next to Wisconsin, abuts to Wisconsin. I believe a year ago we voted against it, which actually was again poor policy.
From the policy that I just read, it was the school board must authorize, is what it said. Or it must come through, how did it say it? I mean, we are re-looking at it in policy because I don't think it says what we thought it said in terms of contiguous states.
For what we have, well, we have two different things here. We have one that deals with music and one deals with sports. Specifically for sports, it says it's states that are contiguous to Wisconsin. So out of state, so any out of state travel needs to come to the board for approval. In-state travel and in-state overnights I can approve, but anything out of state needs to come here. So for specifically the soccer one, the policy states that athletic teams can travel to contiguous states to Wisconsin, but they need approval
They
of
need
the board.
approval, but it says they can,
Right.
as long as they're high-level competitions, not, I'm assuming for a,
Right.
you know,
So they need to come here, and then then the music ones have a little bit broader place where they can travel to. We've sent them to other states, Canada, Ireland, etc. There was another point I was going to make.
The board still has to approve.
You still have to.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, even though it's in policy that they can,
Yeah.
they have to bring it through the board.
It has to
The board
come here.
says yes.
So, but we're not obliged to approve it. It
Right.
just has to come to us for a
It
vote.
just says the following
We-
parameters will guide decisions.
Will guide decisions.
So an athletic team going to adjacent state is one of those.
It's-
So for, that would, go ahead, Gary.
It gets interesting to me in how many days will they miss school and all that
Yep.
when it's athletic stuff when they move there.
Yep.
So I would hope that we're cognizant of all that when we do that.
Yep.
We just had a whole issue with, and we've talked about this before, so it's a discussion we need to have going forward, but we just did a whole thing on holiday policy on worrying about if a kid can afford this or not and who can do this, but we're willing to say that a whole orchestra can go to Europe. And how does that affect the kid who doesn't have the money, or the family doesn't have the money and all, and the things there? So we bring it in when it works sometimes, and we ignore it when it's the other, and then how much should we be doing it anyhow? And it's just, I go round and round, and I've gotten to the point where we don't change it with so many other things. We've picked athletics as the one place to enforce stuff on this, when the rest of them are going all over the world. And I don't know how that's fair either. So it needs to get discussed. It's a longer discussion than tonight. I'm voting for this, so.
Mark?
yeah, I guess I have a hard point when the second last bullet, it says, first of all, third bullet, we prefer all activities remain in Wisconsin. However, athletic teams or co-curricula shall be allowed to travel to states that border. They shall be allowed. So it seems to me the policy is suggesting, although we prefer them here, for that kind of an event, we shall allow it. We still have to approve it, I get that. But the policy suggests it should be approved. And so, as with Gary, if we're gonna do it for non-athletic events, I don't see how, when it fits the parameters, how we can say no.
Well, if they're missing 4 days of school, I guess.
Exactly, exactly.
So just as a couple clarification points, we have had since I keep forgetting the name of the committee, Steve, the economic. Student financial assistance, we've had some of those come through there for a few of these trips just this fall already. The second piece is tomorrow night's policy committee that is looking at this policy, basically per the conversation we're having here is what's really prompting it. But we also potentially have the dance team, who we did not bring their request here, because they were asking to go to Florida. So that did not meet the policy piece, so we did not forward it here, and they would like us to kind of reconsider it. So there is some dialogue between the dance team and administration that will be bringing to the policy committee as part of a reference to as we review this policy.
Are they taking the 7th and 8th graders?
No, not yet.
So let's have a vote on it.
Sounds like a motion to call the question.
So-
Motion to call the question.
Great. So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of the 2 field trips, both the orchestra and the soccer? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Mike comes back.
Until we change the other.
Okay, board business, conventions, workshops, registration forms are in your packet. I'm going, Mark is going.
We're going,
I'll miss you all.
we will miss you, but we know you're gonna have a lot of fun.
Anybody else?
Just make sure you have crawfish down there.
Oh, lots of them.
A reminder to complete the board self-evaluation by January 14th. And you have your,
Anybody did?
yep.
Oh, I think I did too.
Those are my reminders.
Only things I have for future meetings, I do need a budget committee meeting sometime that I'm gonna throw out the week of the 7th of January. So either the 7th or the 8th,
How many days?
Monday or Tuesday. 7th is
would be
Monday,
great.
8th
Monday
is
was,
Tuesday.
if we're gonna do the morning, Monday would be better for me.
Do you prefer?
Fine.
So
January
budget is Mark, Gary, and Chap.
So January 7th?
So if we did the 7th, at what time Mark works?
7:35? That gets me out of the 4K.
Sure.
Say,
Well, 7:39.
How about we do,
Mr.
like-
Mom,
how about we
that's
do
it.
7:45?
7:45 is fine.
7:45 on the 7th. That's all I need.
That's it.
Yep.
Oh, so then, related to that, I won't miss oh, I guess we can talk about it then, the January 1st meeting. So I don't know if we'll wanna reschedule that, or what you'll wanna do, or just get some other board member to go.
All right.
Okay,
We can talk about that
we'll
next
talk
time.
about that.
All right.
But I won't see you in January, so we're
Okay.
going to talk.
With the regular meeting.
Oh,
Yes.
this week.
Is that all you need there, Randy?
That's all I need.
Okay.
Motion to
Motion
approve?
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.